so that I can get your name.
Thank you so much, Allie, for that. Yes, we record the meeting so you can go off camera or mute yourself or not if you don't want to be on camera. But it is important to note, thank you for that reminder that we record the meeting. And thank you, because we would get halfway through and I'd be like, oh my gosh, we forgot to record the meeting. For those who would like to attend. So we meet 4 times a year, October, December, no, it's October, December, March, and June that we meet. And so you are welcome to attend all of those meetings, as well as our upcoming committee meetings that we have. So you can take a look. I won't read verbatim the goals that we have for the upcoming year. Oh, can I? Absolutely. I can definitely. Here's the agenda. That's there. And welcome everybody, please, as people are saying hi and welcome and putting in the chat, definitely welcome and thank you for coming. So our goals really are by 2023, we want to really train and support at least 5% of MSCA members on how to advocate for more inclusion in the Maryland Blueprint career ladder legislation. By 2023, we want to improve diversity. That's something that we have had continuously. In terms of being inclusive, not only in race and gender, but we also are looking at culture, religion, sexual orientation, gender identification, geographic location. It's really important for us. Maryland is a vast, big state. We have the Western and the Eastern Shore, and we want to make sure they're equally represented, as well as human abilities. That is very important to us, that we have people with a variety of different abilities that are a part of our group, and thought in MSCA programming. So that means we want inclusion of all people to be a part of MSCA. And so this is a volunteer organization. So we all are serving. We have 2 paid positions. So if you're thinking about it, interested, one that's coming up, that's opening, oh, actually both of them, membership treasurer. And also, is it website too? Is that a paid position? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes. Yep. Website.
Yeah.
All 3. Yes.
3. So 3.
Mhm.
So please reach out to us. If those positions will be open for next year. I think both of those chairs and those people holding those positions are like, yes. So we definitely would love for your involvement if that's a way that you think you can get involved. And then we want to increase our Maryland School Council Association conference participation. Last year we had around 250. We want to increase it to 400. We are going to be doing the conference, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we'll get started with our report outs and having an opportunity. So we will have Maureen, if you want to share, if you have a report in terms of for the recognition committee and the president-elect report.
All right, good morning. I forgot to say what I do. I'm a resource counselor in Montgomery County Schools at one of the high schools, just so y'all know. All right, so I'm going to share out regarding the recognition committee. We have our next meeting, I believe, scheduled this Tuesday. It looks like the first Tuesday, we're still trying to solidify our standing meeting date. It looks like right now the first Tuesday is what works with most folks. As of this morning, we have, I believe, 16 nominees for our recognition program. We have 5 nominees for elementary school, 6 nominees for middle school, 3 nominees for high school, 2 nominees for the Vivian Vance Advocate of the Year, and 1 nominee for the Novice School Counselor of the Year. We do not have any nominees yet for Counselor Ed, Grad Student, and Administrator of the Year. So the nominee window, I have extended it 2 weeks. I kind of already thought I was going to need to do that because that's how it played out last year. So just looking at the trend. So the nominations have, or the nomination window has been extended to October 14th to give another 2 weeks. I believe an email went out within the last 7 days, just reminding folks to continue nominating. I tried this summer. I realized that the website area regarding the recognition wasn't as updated to reflect what our current practices were. So thanks to Bill for entertaining all my emails. Like, can you fix this? Can you update that? So he was really great and very responsive, so that the information that we have. So one of the things is always being very transparent. For me, and part of equities, if you don't give people information, they're not empowered to make the best choices. So I wanted to make sure that the information on the website really accurately reflects the process, and that we are as transparent in the process from going from like nominee to actually being selected. So that's where we are with the nominations. And then once the nominations close on October 14th, then I will move to notify all of the nominees and kind of explain the next step in the process. Right now, it looks like we are tentatively booked for November 3rd to do an information session for all the nominees for the School Counselor of the Year. For the School Counselor of the Year nominees, it is a little bit more, well, it is a more rigorous process because there's an entire, there's a portal they have to log in to upload lots of artifacts, answer questions, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a practice that works really well to do an information session, and we've got some former School Counselor of the Years kind of lead that information workshop. So Kathleen, Brian, I think Liz will lead that session. The other nominees, I will follow up. There are some questions that they answer, and then those questions get judged by the evaluators that we select later on. So that's where we are with the recognition program for this year.
Maureen, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
You said there's 3 that don't have nominees. Was it grad student, administrator, and?
Counselor, educator.
Thank you.
Any questions about what I've shared so far?
Maureen, just a thought. Can you send Brian, Liz, and I like what the application looks like? Because the way that we did the presentation in the past, that's been back when I did it. So that's like 2020. I know it's very similar, but I just want to make sure we're giving accurate information.
Yeah. I don't know if I can send you the application, but I can definitely look for the talking points, you know.
Okay, or like the question.
Categories, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep,
Thank
absolutely. Any other questions? All right, using my wait time appropriately. So then my other piece is the mentoring committee, which Kathleen mentioned. So that was one of the things that I was needing to transition given all of the other responsibilities. So I had sent out probably in the spring an interest form to see if I could get some folks that would be interested to continue our mentoring program. I checked this morning and still no one has submitted any interest to take on the work of continuing our mentoring program. So the only other thing I can think of is to resend an email to see, you know, now that people are back in school and kind of know their schedules for the year and what they're taking on, to see if anyone's interested in continuing the mentoring program. I am happy to be a support person, but as far as leading it, my plate is full, so I need to recognize when my plate is full and just being able to do those appropriate balances.
Maureen, I think I probably missed that email or in the chain of all the emails. So I think it would be a good idea to send it out again. I'm happy to kind of keep slowly pushing in that direction, but I too don't want to take on like a bunch. I would hate to see the committee just go away.
Right.
But just know, like I'm okay with chairing it and just knowing that it might be slow progress, which is kind of where we've been at. I don't know everybody's thoughts on that.
I think that's a good idea. And while we have a full group of people that are here, and this is our general body, this is a great opportunity. If you want and you're not sure, like, how can I get involved? But maybe you're not a point person to be someone that is always, you know, attending like a variety of different meetings or leading maybe professional development. You're like, I don't know if I have a lot of time. Mentoring can look like a lot of different things where you are helping to facilitate, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maureen or Kathleen, facilitating even small one-on-one sessions, small opportunities where connecting people who are new to the profession with somebody who has who's been in the profession longer, or vice versa, somebody who's been in the profession for longer, but we're learning new strategies about data collection. And I was like, you know what, I would love to have someone who has some experience in new ways to do things, because I've been doing it like me for over 22 years. So I need to learn some new things. So it can be really, I think, a great opportunity, even if you are new to us. a great way to get involved with MSCA. If you're thinking, I don't know how to get involved, but I don't really have a lot of time, this might be the perfect place.
Yeah, and
I don't know,
Maureen and Marion did so much work to like establish like mentor guidelines, and then that's kind of how we approached it. And I saw CC timed in the chat. She actually was my mentee, and we set it up in a way that worked for us. So it was individual. I think we met about once a month, but I know other pairs met at different times. So I'm happy to keep pushing that direction.
Right. And so just to add, for the mentoring committee, it would be the folks that are just kind of overseeing the program. So they're like, we've got lots of resources that we created. So there's like a mentor contract. We would outreach to see who wants to be a mentor, who wants to be mentee this year. Then we match them. And then we monitor periodically throughout the year, just do check-ins. And the mentoring model is really across the board. Some mentor-mentees met almost weekly, and that worked for them for what they needed. And some folks maybe met quarterly. It was depending on what the mentee needed. So the model is really flexible to allow based on the needs of the mentee. So really it's just someone who's going to oversee that. I would probably estimate at most an hour or two a month to be on this committee. It's not a heavy committee because all of the things are there. Of course, it's open if you want to change things. Like you don't have to, you can bring new ideas.
Yeah, and we even got to a point last year where everybody was busy, overwhelmed. We were meeting every other month and just kind of monitoring, like sending out some email communication. Like I sent out a Google form to kind of see how the pairings were going, things like that.
And see, what are you have behind up?
So just for clarification, are you saying we need people on the committee, or are you saying we need to get more mentees and mentors?
Right now, we need a committee, and then the committee has to decide how they want to continue the program. The committee would then begin to recruit mentors and mentees, because it's a one-year commitment when you sign up to be a mentor or a mentee. So everyone who signed up, their commitment ended May, June of this school year.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'm happy to go ahead and just chair the committee. And Maureen, if you want to send me the people that initially were interested, but I think it's a good idea if we send it out again.
Okay.
And then I'll set up a meeting and we'll see what we can get rolling for this year.
Okay.
And I saw Kelly, you put your hand down, but did you have something or was that answered already?
Oh, sorry, Kelly.
Good morning. No, I was just saying I would be willing to participate possibly. So I'd just like to look at the criteria and possibly participate on the committee.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. So for me, what I'm hearing is sending a follow-up to see who would like to be part of the mentoring committee. That's what we were trying to recruit for the committee, because you can't run a program. We can't recruit for the program if we don't have anybody running the program. So that's the first, I think, focus. So I'll work on sending an email to, once again, see if folks are interested in joining the mentoring committee, and then the committee would then decide how they want to roll out the program this year.
Sounds good. Thanks, Maureen.
And that is all I have, unless I overlooked a topic, Nikki.
Nope, you're good. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then what we have now, let's see, is our next topic is our president-elect. No, not president-elect. Our immediate past president, Dr. Laura Jones. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here. She's taking care of family business, which is always, if you know me, I'm always like, family comes first. But there is, at this time, there is no updates for the bylaw, and she'll start recruiting for elections in January. So if you heard me say earlier, this is a big election year. So we encourage you to begin to start thinking about ways that you can start getting involved. This is my last year as president, and then I move into the role of immediate past president. And Maureen will become president for Maryland School Council Association. And so that means that then there is an opening for president-elect, as well as our treasurer is opening and a few other positions. So please think about and you'll start hearing us to talk about starting in January, because the elections will be in the spring. So we'll have some opportunities where you can find and talk with us to find out what it entails to be in those positions and what the responsibilities are. So consider it. It's all about service. If you want this, particularly if you're concerned about the profession and where we're headed, and you're like, I hate the way that Nikki did things, this is your time to step in and take over and run it like you think it needs to be done. So this will be great. So we really need your involvement. So much need your involvement. All right. And I'm trying not to sound like I'm begging you, but we definitely want your involvement. All right. And so my report is next. And ultimately, you have it there, some of the information that I'm going to really talk about and share. And let me just share out the screen so that way we can have that information. Please check in the monthly calendars. We send out those as well as information to make sure, I apologize. I have the January one. I will put up there the, let me put the link in for the October calendar. So let me copy that link and give you that because that's more important. That's what you need. You don't need January. This is the October calendar and we share this information as well as this information is updated on the website and providing information so that way you know what's going on within MSCA, and you're invited and welcome to attend any of those upcoming activities that we are having regarding the MSCA programming. The other piece of information that I wanted to share is the conference. That is one of the big, as a state association of ASCA, we're responsible for hosting conferences once a year. We're responsible for hosting a state conference. And so our conference again will be March 19th to the 20th. We're having it in Cambridge, Maryland. You've heard earlier on, we're about being intentional, about being inclusive. And we don't want to forget our fellow counselors on the Eastern Shore. Many times they feel as if they're left out of things, like we don't know what's going on. So we brought the conference to them. So it is going to be in Cambridge, Maryland. We have paid our deposit to hold and secure this space. And so you can go to the website. We are accepting proposals. So if you have a great idea, if you have something that's interesting, if you're doing something, and you are, I promise you, as counselors, you are doing things, please consider attending, registering not registering, but submitting a proposal for the conference. Proposals are due November the 15th, so in about 6 weeks. That's when the proposals are due. The other part, and I don't have it here, but it's in the monthly calendars. We meet the second Tuesday of every month, and the link is there. You don't need to let us know you're coming. Just come and attend the conference committee. We want all people to be involved, to be a part of it. So please consider attending the conference committee meetings the second Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. And so the other part is that we've had a rate change for the registration. The early bird registration is $190. We've gone up on the conference rate only because what we found is when we started researching around as our fellow school state associations, we were pretty much within that, we were really on the lower scale, and looking at what we were providing, a 2-day conference, it just didn't match up. We actually were wind up taking a greater hit financially. And so to be much more fiscally responsible with your money, because your members, it was important for us to make the rate comparable to what you were receiving. So the early bird rate is $190. That is until January. And then the rate goes up, let's say to I can't remember the right amount, but if you go to the link, you'll see, I'm gonna say it's like 215 or something like that. Our keynote speakers are going to be Melissa Reeves and John Hodge, really talking about and focusing on equity as well as trauma. Yes, Allie.
I just want to throw out there as well, just for full transparency, if you are in the past, if you're on the conference committee and you work, you get either discounted or go for a discounted rate or for free or something. So if you are interested, you're like, oh, that's not in my budget this year, then help us out. And then it might be decided again. I don't know, because I don't think we've gotten to that point. But I'm just throwing that out there, and we need more people on the conference committees.
Yes, we definitely do. And we definitely will look at, in terms of, as a conference committee, looking at the scale rate of those things. So yes, but we need help because it's a big lift, especially for a 2-day conference. You saw we're looking to increase from 250 to 400 attendees, which means that we want, we need about 150 more people. And so to do all of these things, we definitely need your participation. And so, and it can look like, here's the thing, at least for me as a conference committee chair, to me, it can look like a lot of different things. You may or may not attend a meeting, but please, if you're able to review proposals and sit down and look at a matrix list and assign rooms and kind of coordinate a variety of different things, that does more to me than if you attend every single meeting. Like, to me, if you sit in a meeting, just sitting in a meeting, then that's nice. But if you're able to work behind the scenes and look at and work at, because I'm not an organizational person, looking at a matrix and looking at assigning volunteers and putting people different places. If you can do that on a Saturday night at 7 p.m. in your bedroom, however you do it, that would serve me more than if you attend every single meeting. That's me. That's how I stand with it. As well as a lot of times the day before the conference, we need help stuffing bags. If you can come and volunteer and do that, that is to me like gold as opposed to attending every single meeting. So those are the ways that you can be involved as a conference committee person, staying after to help clean up and not, and what it looks like. So those are some of the things that you can, if you look at and say, I can't be there every Tuesday at 7, but I can do this, this, this. To me, that's what is really golden and helpful. All right, Allie, you still have your hand up, or is that from before? That was from before. Okay. And then advocacy updates. I won't take Holly's thunder because she's gonna feel a little bit about what we've been doing with advocacy. That's the committee that I typically work with the closest, as well as the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee, as well as Merchandise Committee, but they're here as well. But advocacy updates, we have been doing some wonderful things. And so when it's Holly's time, she'll share more about what we've been doing regarding meeting with other associations to talk about the Maryland Blueprint, meeting with MSCE. We've met with Jonathan presenting at MSCE with the state school counselors of supervisors, the school counselor supervisors of the 24 counties in the state of Maryland. We've met with them to kind of share about what we're doing in MSCA, as well as meeting with delegates and scheduled meetings with Ways and Means Committee. The other big thing that we're going to share, and you'll start hearing us to advertise, is we have coordinated with the Maryland School Psychologists Association, the National Association of School Social Work, Maryland, the Mental Health Association of Maryland, and we're reaching out to the Maryland Counseling Association to, we've been able to do, through a wonderful partnership and collaboration, we've been able to initiate a conversation with the gubernatorial candidates who, the Democrat gubernatorial candidate. So we have a confirmed date with him, Wes Moore, to talk about student behavioral health, a conversation about student behavioral health in the state of Maryland. And that is going to be scheduled for Friday, October the 14th, not at an ideal time. The time is that we were given is at 2:30 in the afternoon. And we're like, but we're working at that time. How could you do that? Unfortunately, it appears that that is the time that they have set aside. They've done the same with Maryland Families Partners, Maryland Family Partnerships. And it seems as if typically in the afternoon is the time that they set aside, they be in that campaign to have these sort of conversations. So we are looking to have it as a webinar, which we would live stream via YouTube, via Facebook, and then you can watch. It would not be in a Facebook meeting situation like this, but more so of a webinar, which would be live streamed because you were teaching or you were working, or not necessarily teaching, maybe doing classroom lessons, groups, meeting with families, all of those sort of things. So it would be a webinar live stream, and each of the 4 organizations would have a representative, or 5 have a representative to have this conversation. We'll start asking for questions and what you want to be addressed by the gubernatorial candidates. We have a confirmed date again with Wes Moore for Friday, October the 14th at 2:30. We have reached out to Dan Cox and his team and sent an email. But if anybody has a contact person with Dan Cox, please, we want to make sure, because we are we're nonpartisan political nonprofit. So we're nonpartisan political a nonpartisan political nonprofit. And so for us, it's important that we invite both candidates to the table and having this conversation. And so we don't have a confirmed date with Dan Cox's team, but we want to have a conversation with him as well. And so we have sent an email with letting him know this date and time and saying that we want to make ourselves available. And so if anybody has a contact, please, we would love to have an introduction and an opportunity to extend that invitation as well, because this is an important conversation to talk about our students and student behavioral health. And let's see. Oh, yes, Maureen says you have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. It's still about the conference. I just wanted to make sure we noted and shared with all of our participants today that we are folding in the recognition celebration in the conference. The committee, we are working to determine when it will be, if it will be like the Saturday night or a Sunday luncheon. But I just wanted that to be reflected, given that that's a new, a significant change for this year. And again, it's just looking at the investment in money, and we want to be good stewards with the membership dues that are provided for the organization, and just thinking what is the most effective way to do the celebration, because it is a huge expense within our budget. And then the other piece is also, I'm always looking for new folks. So if you're interested in being part of the recognition committee, the only criteria is that you have interest. That's it. And we can use your time. We usually meet once a month, and then it's just typically some small follow-up for folks. So not a big time commitment for our members. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And it is at 2:30. Nina was just asking a question about the live stream, so I changed that to 2:30. And yes, if you look at the agenda notes from June 2023, it was decided at that meeting. That's why it's so great to have, if you come to these meetings, you have a voice and a say. So it's decided and voted on at that meeting that we fold the recognition committee, instead of having a recognition gala, which we had a separate gala on a separate day in the evening, fold that into the conference. And so that way we can be able to allocate those funds in a different direction. And so actually that leads into the lobbyists that we have. And I'll allow Holly, when it's her turn, to talk about that. We have secured a lobbyist. And so that we've redistributed some of those funds to really focus on lobbying efforts. All right. And again, are there any questions about the advocacy, the conversation with the gubernatorial candidates? Anything? And again, I keep stressing this enough. Please email me, president@mascaonline.org, or even Holly, if you have a contact with Dan Cox's campaign, because we definitely want to make sure that we are reaching him and extending an invitation and providing a platform and an opportunity to have this conversation as well. All right, moving on. Treasurer report.
Good morning, everybody. As of right now, as of today, our bank account balance is, Allie, I did send these to you private message, so you know, $72,377.03. And we have a PayPal balance of $6,034.21. For those who are new, I always leave some money in PayPal and transfer it every couple of months so that when there's refunds and things that need to be paid directly, there's money in that account so that it can just go a little bit faster. Our bank account balance seems a little high right now, but that's because we are going to start having lots of things that need to be paid for the conference, and that takes a big chunk. So as those things start to come up, that balance will definitely go down. Nikki, I wanted to check. I have not seen any invoice recently for like the down payment or anything for the actual venue. Usually I pay that directly and then the other things go to Robert. So I just wanted to check in about that.
Yes, actually, I think we did the deposit.
Did it already? Okay. I just wanted to
I
make
want to say,
sure.
was it 1,000 or 5,000?
It's usually 5,000.
5,000. I think we did that back in June.
Okay, we did. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure. And now that the gala is with the conference, that's one, one less expense, because the gala was a beautiful event, but we weren't making funds off of it. And so I think it was a great idea to combine them, because it was a big cost that was going out on an annual basis. And we weren't seeking to make money off of it because it's a celebration, but it was taking a big chunk out. So fiscally, I do think that it was a really, really responsible choice. Ali, yeah, I see you in here twice, so I'll send it to the other one. And just a plug for all of those who are new in the room. When you are a committee chair, VP, any type of elected or appointed board member, it's a very, very supportive process. So please don't feel like you don't have the means and ability to do so. I just want to give a shout out to Nikki just for being super supportive, because these positions they can be tough and a lot to balance, but you have a really, really great team of people that are working with you and backing you up when you're, in our position, like with me and Bill, we have pretty much daily work. So it is tough, but it is a stipend position because of how often you have to be in communication with members, with board members, things like that. So just wanted to plug, because my position is one that is coming up. And it's the quarterly meetings and monthly executive board meetings. So please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about the position. I know that Sharon's going to get a chance to speak, but we are paying for that storage unit today during this call. So we will have our storage unit for all of the merchandise, as well as all of the kind of I guess you would call it event swag and paraphernalia that we keep in the big old, what is that thing called? Step and repeat. And the presidents tend to just have to keep stuff in their basements, and husbands and wives get quite upset about it. So that is all I have, but I did want to give a chance for the group for any questions that you guys might have regarding the budget. Anytime that you are a committee chair, you can request monies if you don't already see that your committee has a dedicated budget. We only know that you need based on you coming to the table and asking and saying, hey, I see we voted past couple years for 500, but I actually need 1,200 for merchandising, or I want to build this ethics committee and I want to buy books for everybody on the committee. I need $600. So even if something is not in the budget now, it doesn't mean we can't spend it. It just means we need to have a conversation. We can spend, and then we can vote on it to be, is this a one-time thing, or is this something that needs to be added as a budget line item? Talking about money is so fun, right? Thank you guys for dealing with the boring details.
And thank you, Xiomara. I mean, and let me just say this. It sounds like we're like a advertisement, but I want to be, because this is her last year, but you can do it. I know as school counselors, we're like, we don't do money. Oh my goodness. And Xiomara didn't. She didn't go to accounting or anything like that. We also, I will say, ASCA provides support. So we have an accounting firm that works with and partners with us that we can reach out to and to help along the way. So you're not alone with managing that. You also, if you're like me, you don't like dealing and touching money, and you hide cards from yourself and you hide it so well in the house that you have to call the bank and find out the new card number, we will understand and be patient, because the reality of it is that we know that ultimately you mean and you want the best. So don't let it be nervous to you. We share the budget out for you so you can see. That's why we also share out with you right now as general body members how much we have. This is yours. It's not ours. We're just the stewards of this, but this is your money as members. So you need to know how much we have down to the penny, and then how we're spending it. And if you want to, and we want your involvement to be involved as a committee person or as a member of committee. If you see something, you're like, it'd be great if MSCA did that. come to us, tell us, let us know. And you see what our budget looks like. We can see how we can do that and get involved with it. We are open to all of that. As as this isn't our personal money, this is your money. And so we want you to be involved. We want you to know what's going on, where it's being spent, how we're spending it, and what we're doing with your money. But also think about running for treasurer. You can do it. You're not alone. It's a committee. It isn't. And I promise you won't lose all our money. We won't let that happen. So it won't disappear. It won't go anywhere. It really is. And if you're somebody who's behind the scenes and doesn't like to be in front of everything, this is the perfect job as a treasurer, because you work quietly behind the scenes doing stuff. So you don't have to be out and about with everything. And it comes with a stipend. So please consider.
And for those of you who are like, oh, but she does a good job, she should do it. This is actually the end of my 6th year. So it really is something that in the beginning is like a little overwhelming, but once you get into it, and now we have this partnership where they really do a lot of the work for us. And Nikki and I are going to be talking to them to see how much more is possible for them to take on. So it is coming down as far as time and responsibility wise, but it's definitely something that we need to keep going, and we don't want to lose the opportunity, especially when it comes to membership and treasury, because again, it is a stipend position because of the work level, but this team is just phenomenal. So please, please, please consider.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just muted myself. I always do that. That's not what I meant to do. So thank you so much. And again, you have the budget there for you to take a look at, as well as the money and what we have. And so take a look at all of that. All right. And the next person that we have, well, wait a minute. Did I jump over Secretary of Social Media? I don't see. How could I forget you, Allie? So before we go into our committee, our VPs,
so I don't need a tab for secretary, but I will do a plug that I'm also coming to the end of about my 6th year. So ZMR started about the same time. So if you feel as though you're really not the mathematical person, but maybe you are a typer, or secretary has been fantastic. Again, I don't need a spot on this because there's really nothing to report. I come to the meetings and I take the notes and help Nikki with any kind of archiving that she might need. But really, the secretary is a great way to get your foot in the door to attend all the elected board meetings and things like that. But at the same point, I've been doing it for a long time. So I think it's a great opportunity for somebody else to step into this role. So I'm going to also be relinquishing this role at the end of this school year. So please contact me. But honestly, Nikki, there's never anything to report as secretary because I'm taking notes, and social media is further down under committees. So
perfect. Okay. Sometimes I'm like, did I forget? All right. Thank you. All right. VP of Elementary VP, Tracy.
Good morning. I do not have anything to report today.
All right. Thank you. And Middle School VP.
Good morning. I don't have much of a report either. However, I will say the Lauren, hello? Are you all there? Okay.
Yeah, we're here. We're
Sorry,
here.
my screen just jumped and I didn't see anyone. I will report that the Lawrence Law training is coming up. So if you need to take Lawrence Law, you can find that on the MSCA website. Also, we are looking into continuing. We had 2 phenomenal presentations on becoming an LCPC last year. And so I'm looking forward to gearing back up to get the boot camp started so that members of MSCA and counselors and other members in the mental health profession who want and need to take the NCE have a place to study. So that look forward to that coming, and something special for our middle school counselors. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanta. Thank you. And Shanta, if I'm not mistaken, you said you are a middle school counselor and the lone middle school counselor at your school? Is that what you said?
I am this year. We are only slated for 2, but administration went in a different direction. And so it's just me. And I do have a team of people who can help, but I'm the only counselor. So.
All right. And oh, you said, are you still? No, I'm not sharing my screen at the moment. But no, I'm sorry, I saw a chat. And I just share that to say, because we realize that all our counselors are doing some amazing things. And so we thank you for what you're doing, because I know that all our counselors across the state are taking hits in a variety of different ways. And so I appreciate that you are still able to help and volunteer. So your service is definitely greatly appreciated.
No problem.
right.
Thank you.
And I can go back and share. Let's see. At high school VP, Marion.
Good morning, everyone. So kind of as you see here, I'm working on a couple things. So something that I am planning currently with the post-secondary and financial aid specialist in my school district, Baltimore City, Tracy Kittle. We are working on developing a webinar around financial assistance. She has always been fantastic in my district, and I want to share, her expertise, her wisdom, since she has worked kind of on both sides of the aisle. She's working with school counselors, but she's also been a financial aid advisor herself in the past. She's worked on the college side. So I'm currently working on that, hoping to do that for sometime in October, latest November, but currently working on that with her. October 1st. So some of you, may remember that as part of my role in MSCA as high school VP, I'm also on the Financial Assistance Advisory Council for MHEC. And so with that, we are going to be reviewing the financial outreach plans that need to be submitted to FAC. The deadline was today. And that's from the bill that was passed back in May of 2021, saying that all high schools need to do multiple things. And some of those include having 3 financial aid events, either on the weekends or the nights, which is a separate kind of conversation, but there are multiple things that need to be done to ensure that our students, especially those in our more vulnerable populations, are really being served accordingly and supported to the fullest extent of our abilities. So I will be reviewing outreach plans for Caroline and Carroll counties, potentially Howard County as well. And then lastly, I am hoping to hold the recertification webinar. I was able to connect with someone from MHEC to kind of put together some stuff, but I'm waiting on some final details to hold that. And just as a general plug, my high school counselors, college app season is coming up. It is always busy for high school counselors, but especially in the fall, we're writing letters of recommendation and trying to manage all of our personal things as well. So just know I'm thinking about you, and if I can do anything to help assist in any way, shape, or form, or of course if MSCA can help, I can definitely pass that along. But any questions, I'll put my email in the chat. It's on the agenda as well, but please don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Sometimes unmuting myself is its own nightmare. So I apologize. So thank you. And thank you, Marion. And I think that for those in other levels may not know, if the biggest part is there's a law that came out, and Marion, you may want to share a little bit about the financial aid, what is required for people who are at other levels, like elementary or middle, may not be aware of what that law is and what is and how it's impacting school counselors.
Yeah, so I touched on it briefly, kind of in my speech. It was long-winded, so I understand it probably got lost in the sauce. But basically, a bill was passed by the Maryland Senate back in May of 2021, stating that districts need to submit an outreach plan, and in that outreach plan, they need to detail how they're going to be supporting students in applying for financial assistance, whether that be FAFSA, MISPA, any sort of kind of financial assistance, scholarships, things like that. Again, some of that includes putting on financial aid events, ways to support students. Some of it is just submitting specific like advertising plans and things like that. But again, counties were supposed to have sent that to FAC, the Financial Assistance Advisory Council, by October 1st, today. So any of our district folks on the call, I see Jackie. I know that she's probably grateful that's over. But if you have any questions, let me know. I do see that Jonathan Turner has put in the chat kind of the law there. So thank you so much for that. It's quite complicated, when you look at the bill, but it's really not that complicated once, you're able to look at it and, just kind of process some of that. So if anyone wants the quick version of the bill, please let me know.
Thank you. And I see Jonathan, you raised your hand, so please chime in.
Yeah, thanks. And good morning, everybody. I'm sorry I didn't pop on and show my face earlier. I was a little distracted, but no, and Marion, thank you for providing that overview of it. And so, I dropped the link to it's Maryland Annotated Code 7-212. And so in there, it's only a 1 or 2 page bill article, but there was a lot of requirements that it asked of local school boards, which, school counselors and certainly the supervisors of school counselors were really inundated with driving that work. So we actually had a FAFSA committee over the course of the summer, just from outreach with the local supervisors of school counselors like Jackie Chavez in Charles County and some of the other participating counties. And we, met almost bi-weekly or so just to kind of go through the different parts of the bill and come up with some questions that need clarified from the FAAC and MHEG. And so it was really a good process, a lot of great ideas. Dr. Karen Cruz from Montgomery County developed some great resources that she shared with the group that were very helpful. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of suggestions and feedback the Financial Aid Advisory Council gives. But I just wanted to, really shout out the supervisors of school counselors who, are working really hard, to lead this work and other related items. So it's just been a real pleasure to be a part of that process, and just be interesting to see what comes from some of the recommendations that the FAAC makes. But it really is another chance to highlight, because as Nikki mentioned earlier, we know that school counselors are doing all kinds of great work, and so this is really just highlighting the work that you're already doing, and it's just kind of putting it now in a more structured, formalized plan that different agencies and different committees in local government will be able to see.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. And this is why that partnership that we have and working together with MSCA as well as with MSCA, how we work really seamlessly, because Jonathan is responsible for making sure these things are happening. But what we can do is, before they become a law, we can really advocate and really have a very strong voice. Jonathan can't do so much because he is on the executive end of it, but we can. We always say, and that's a lead into when Holly begins to talk in terms of we don't have comment on politicians, but we do have comments on policies that impact school counselors. And so we can speak very candidly about the policies, especially during a legislative session, that are at the table that really will impact school counselors, and what they look like. And we will be the people that speak up and be like, hey, have us at the table. Make sure somebody from school counseling is there when you're making up these laws. So that way we can make sure that, it is, really realistic and kind of can highlight and realistic in what we can do. And so that is a way that so that way when Jonathan gets the law, it would have been like, oh, a school counselor was involved with this. And then it kind of moves seamlessly through that. Not just Jonathan, because Jonathan represents an office in MSDE. So not Jonathan, the person.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Nikki. And, the other side of that, so kind of what happens, so I work in the Division of Student Support, Academic Enrichment, and Education Policy. And so during legislative season, if a bill is elementary and secondary ed related, there's a very good chance if there's any kind of fiscal or agency impact statement that needs to be addressed, we'll sometimes get those requests. And so then we have to kind of draft language on what the fiscal or the operational impact might be for school systems. But we have to, we have to take a very neutral stance with how we approach things. And we, to Nikki's point, we don't get to have those often those face-to-face conversations with the legislators. So to hear that there's a lobbyist there that's supporting school counseling is going to be huge, because the other piece, and particularly with this past bill with 7-212, that actually got assigned to MHEC, to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So on the K-12 side, we didn't even really get a big heads up about it. And as I said, I really commend the supervisors of counseling, because they kind of brought it to our attention to say, hey, this is what's happening. Can we get some help and support? And we, developed that group, and it was a really nice process to kind of work through that. But yeah, so it's just very encouraging that Nikki and MSCA are going to have a lobbyist there, because it will really help, and I think it'll make some real important impact.
Yeah, so thank you. Well, we want to try and make sure that school counselors are able to do what we need to do to serve our students and our population. So, and thank you, Marion, because Marion has been really instrumental in kind of really making sure she's a strong voice on the commission that she served on, to be able to say, hey, hello, school counselors, we do this, we do that, you're trying to. So she's been trying, to really have a very strong voice. And so you'll hear from us from time to time as we get invited to serve on work groups and commissions. We'll extend an invitation to have your voice that's there. So thank you. Thank you so much. All right, and I will move on to post-secondary. Unless, Marion, did you have anything else to say? Okay, great. Post-secondary VP report.
Yes. Hi, everyone. And I'm so sorry. My cat knocked over my camera maybe about 20 minutes ago, and I haven't been able to turn it back on. So I'm so sorry, but I am here. I put a lot of notes in the minutes. I'll just go through those. So to start off, and generally speaking, I'm working on connecting the two graduate student reps, Jason and Camille, just so they can get to know one another, and we can begin planning the various grad student seminars. We typically have one in the fall and the spring. And then planning the first meeting of the Graduate Student Council. Jason really worked hard with Kate last year to get the council up and off the ground, and to reach out to the various schools across the state of Maryland to recruit graduate students to join the council. And so you're going to make sure that gets back up and running for the new school year. And focusing on school counselor educators, I'm working on a networking event, and that would focus on just getting to know one another, because I don't even know all the other school counselor educators at other higher ed institutions in the state of Maryland who are focusing on school counseling. Discussing ways to collaborate with our school counselors who are serving as site supervisors. That's been a really, really important topic, especially during COVID. So what are ways that we as faculty can support our grad students and school counselors who are serving as site supervisors, and ways to support school counseling graduate students in this ever-changing world. And lastly, various education requirements. So, and Jonathan, I may have this date correct, but I recall in October 2020, there's new expectations for all graduates. I know our school counseling students were included, and in order to have a stamp on their transcript, they have to take either at the undergraduate or graduate level, at least 3 credits of special education. And so some faculty didn't know that. And so we want to make sure that we are communicating to make sure that all of our students get that stamp so they can graduate their stamp on their transcript. Also, we are partnering with ACES, their school counseling interest network. And that group is full of current and upcoming faculty that are focusing on school counseling graduate students, and both current and past school counselors. They have a range of committees and divisions, and so hopefully we can find a place to tap in to connect and collaborate. As for workshops, we were thinking about either standalone workshops or workshops to include in the grad student seminar. So here's some topics that kind of came up last year during the grad student seminar and other topics that people have mentioned. And one was working in independent schools. I definitely want to tap back into Alexis for a collaboration. I know most of my work as a school counselor was in independent schools, and this topic isn't always discussed. And so I want to make sure that our graduate students know that independent schools are out there. Supporting students with exceptionalities, that's really, really important too. Supporting students of color attending independent schools, a very unique population. Becoming an LCPC in Maryland, you have quite a few school counselors who are interested in that. And I have a new collaboration with Shanta about that. And then also the process for becoming a certified school counselor in Maryland. That's another topic that came up a little bit. And then, of course, we're open to any other ideas and collaborations that you may feel would be helpful. And also, once our 2 graduate students are connected, we can get everything up and off the ground. But I wanted to at least put these things out. If you're interested in collaborating, or if you have any ideas, etc., I'm more than willing to connect with you all. I'm really, really excited to be here. Open to any questions you have. We good?
Dr. Smith, I just want to push, or if you could have the grad student reps, Jason and Camille, push the social media. That's one thing that I would love for the younger members to make sure they know about. So if they could make sure that the classes or the council and stuff like that can push the social media, we'd love to have them join. Because
Awesome,
they're going to get a lot of their information.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Exactly. I know Camille is here. I know Jason's not here, but Camille, if you have anything to share, I don't want to overlook you. Feel free to chime in if you would like.
Sorry, everyone. I'm kind of new to this, but all the ideas about connecting us and attending seminars, that is great, especially because I need PDA hours outside of that, but just to learn the ways of in and out of school counseling, because eventually I'll graduate and I need to know what to do and how I fit into the Maryland Counseling Association and things like that. So this will be very helpful to me in the seminars. Now, as far as the social media, what does that entail?
Really, it just entails making sure they know about it. And I'm going to go into a little bit of the age frames of each thing, but I'm dropping our Instagram, our Facebook, and our Twitter logins, how to follow our titles. So it's just making sure that they know, especially Instagram, because that's where our younger population tends to follow.
Okay. Okay, so that's all from me.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I see Xiomara, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think one thing that might be a good idea, and Nikki's going to crack up, but as I hear you talking, Atia, I think a really good presentation would literally be other duties as assigned.
Right. Okay.
Because what I hear most from my interns is we get really well trained in mental health,
yeah,
but not necessarily in all the other things that we have to do as school counselors. So
okay.
Obviously you can't go into every little thing because each system will train you there on their own, but just some sort of framework that kind of outlines all the different hats that we do actually wear,
Yes.
504s and all the stuff that we
Yes.
dread.
Yeah.
But I think that seems to be the common thread that I hear from my interns of like, this is not what we learned.
Right. Okay, definitely. I will add that. That's so important. I also see Kathleen's comment about administration as well, and how administrators view school counselors. That's a hot topic too. So thank you both. I'll make sure that's included. And ZMR, I owe you some names for last year's panelists, and I'm so sorry, but I will send that along to you.
Yes, just send me wherever I need to mail the check and how much their fees were.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. And I see the comments in there. It's everyone saying, and other duties as assigned. That even will probably be a great title for a workshop presentation.
Right?
In terms of, what that looks like. And I love what Ciamota said, which is it does vary by county, because as somebody who's worked in multiple counties and then also in independent schools, it looks different depending on the county and the setting you're in. But I do think it can be helpful. And just the key is flexibility. But I think this is great. So thank you so much. And looks exciting. All right. And now moving on to our committees, and we turn over to Bill for a membership and website. They are two separate committees, but we just put them because Bill is our membership and website. And he is also looking for, I'm going to do a little plug. You're like, as all these openings, but he's been serving since the
for website, I've been serving for 10 years.
Yeah, I was going to say since the turn of the century.
And for the membership, I'd say probably like 5 or 6 years or so. So definitely could use anyone that's interested in membership or the website. They are both paid positions. The website, you need to know a little bit of HTML, but it's not anything that you can't figure out on the job like I did. And then for the membership, it's just a matter of being available to make sure you're answering those questions and connecting with any members that are having issues. Because most of our membership is automatically, they go on, they set it up, they pay automatically and it goes through. But every once in a while, there's an issue. So you got to kind of keep an eye on the email, make sure that you're kind of connecting with those people to get them set up if they want to re-register or new members that have an issue. So any questions, feel free to reach out. I guess, Allie, do you mind clicking on the link so we can open up the presentation?
I think that's Nikki. She's the one.
Oh, okay, sorry. Nikki then. Okay, this is the main page that we have on the website. As you can see, we do have the link to our conference on there now. We have the link to Lauren's Law, and we do have a pop-up now, Nikki, for those things you asked me to put on there. So the pop-up, it includes is it a webinar today? I forget what it is. I apologize.
Oh, I'm muted. The conversation with the lobbyists.
Yes,
So yeah.
That's on there for today. Lauren's Law's on there. The nominations is on there. So just keeping a pop-up on there for now to kind of get those things out quickly. Let me go on to the next slide. Okay, for the website, we're about where we normally are for this time of year. We had about 2,000 hits in the month of September, which is only a little bit lower than last year. Whereas in August, we were up a little bit, about 174 higher than we were last year. So we're about even from where we were. For those of you that are new, if you look at the actual graph we have on here, our highest was in 2020, because in 2020 we had COVID, and that was the only way we were kind of getting anything out there. So of course, those are going to be our high numbers from February 2020 for both the daily hits and the monthly hits. So we can go to the next slide. This slide just indicates the top pages that we have that people are hitting on for the past 90 days. Obviously, our homepage is the first one. Our members only section gets a lot of hits, mostly because on there we do have links to our webinars, previous webinar recordings, things like that. And then we have the contact pages. Contact page is basically an email. They'll email us, and then that email gets sent out to whoever it needs to get sent out to. And of course, Unpacking Lauren's Law is a big one. So that's one of the top ones as well. And then new members. We'll go to the next slide. We have a partnership with a company called Multiview, where they have an advertiser around the homepage. And so we have, through Multiview, they actually reach out to different organizations like St. Mary's College, Salisbury, Coppin. There's actually a lot less than there normally are this time of year. I don't see Bowie on there at this time, which I thought was interesting. But as a result of that, they'll connect with these different colleges, they'll advertise on our page. If we go to the next slide, we'll see what we've been making. So last year, as a result of having that one link, we made $7,000, a little over $7,000. This year, right now, as of this moment, we're about 5,000. So as you can see, from 2019 through today, each year we're making a little bit more. So, and one thing I talked about at the last meeting, and I have some, we're playing back and forth emails. We're looking to put another place on the site where we have another link to another advertiser, hoping to bring in some more royalties. Now we switch over to membership. Currently, as of right now, as of last night, actually, we're at 978 current members. What happens is we were at over 1,000 at the end of the year last year, and right at the end of the summer, because people's memberships renew and it's not automatic renewal, we get usually a drop, and then we have the membership drive and the numbers come back up slowly. So this is our last day of the membership drive. So I'll get to that in a minute. As of right now, we have 152 members that are overdue renewals. We have 41 lapsed members, 198 pending renewal, and 40 new members in the past 30 days. And that's because of the membership drive. But we will put out one more email today, since this is the last day of the membership drive, trying to get drives any last minute renewals or new members. So if we go to the next slide, we did the membership drive as of yesterday. We had 185 members that joined during the membership drive. That was the end of August till yesterday. Well, there'll be some more as of today. So they joined and renewed. 13 of those were grad students. We had one retired member, which is a new option we put on there. And we had 172 others that renewed. Last year, I separated between new members and renewal members, but because we changed the price from 35 to 40, it's like it was difficult to kind of tease out which one was which. So we're just gonna say 172 counselors either renewed or became a new member during the membership drive. And also, for those of you that are new, we actually upped the membership cost at the beginning of the year. So in July, our membership went from 35 to 40. Our grad student members went from 20 to 25. And then we added a new membership for retired members at $30. And lastly, and Marion, I know you haven't talked much during this, but this is something that Marion and I put together and sent out. We did a mailing right sometime beginning of September. That should have gone to everybody a few weeks ago. That we had about 3,000 or so counselors that this should have gone out to. I know I got mine at school, and my other counselor got hers, and I think Marion got hers, so it did go out. We used Vistaprints, and we used the information that Nikki got us from MSCA, with hoping to drum up some more new members. Unfortunately, we didn't get as many. We were hoping to get a lot more than we did. To be quite honest, we're about the same as we were last year as far as people that are kind of taking advantage of the membership drive, which is on the postcard. We were hoping to get a lot more, but it didn't pan out the way we wanted it to. But I mean, the mailing did get out there. So maybe as the year goes on, with more people that got this card, we'll get more members as time goes on. And with the membership drive, keep in mind that the only people that get a discounted rate are new members. The rest of the counselors are getting entered into a raffle, which we'll be doing next general meeting for the beginning of November. And that's when they'll be getting one of those prizes that are on here, which is one free entry to this year's conference, including hotel stay, which is the top prize. Then we have the free entry to the conference, then free year of membership to ASCA, which is a good one, free year of membership to MSCA, and then $30 credit on the MSCA store. So we'll do that raffle at the next meeting. Marion, do you have anything to add?
No, just that, I think this postcard was a great idea, and I'm glad that we were able to do it. I'm obviously very sad that we weren't able to get more school counselors to join us, but I do share that optimism and that hope that, maybe things will kind of change as the time goes on. And, even though counselors didn't take advantage of that, or more counselors didn't take advantage of our membership drive, hopefully we'll see those numbers continue to increase throughout the year.
And I will say that our numbers are up from last year at this point. So we have one more day of the membership drive. And as of last year at this point, we're up about, I'd say 20 members than we were last year, but then we bounced up a lot more as the year went on. So I'm hoping for the same.
And I think it might still go up too, Bill, because like I haven't received my postcard yet. So, sometimes with snail mail, I think you'll still get people that are receiving it as the weeks go on.
Gotcha. Now keep this in mind. The information we got from MSDE was as accurate as we could possibly make it. It was going to the schools and it was going to the counselor names. Now, I'm not sure how accurate or up to date their information was, but we used that information, and then we used the information that we had online for independent schools as well. So we did the best we can with the information that was offered to us. So.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the fact that you did that outreach, which I think was really creative and unique, and especially in this day and age where people are used to not receiving, it would have been easier just for us to send an email. It is helpful sometimes to get that actual physical something in the mail for our members can be really nice. So I really thank Marion and for Bill for initiating that and kind of putting that together, doing that mock-up. And then as I'm looking, okay.
I'm sorry, I did one question with Zero. I know Zero else that you didn't get it. Did anyone else get it? I know Marion got hers, I got mine.
I got mine at work, my work email.
Yeah, they'll all go to work. So everyone that was sent out was sent to the schools and their counselors. So if you're gonna get it, you'll go to your school.
Yeah, I see a couple people shaking their head. Carolyn, you're new, so it probably wouldn't get you, but like Holly and I have both been at our schools for a while, so our information should have been accurate. And I saw her saying no as well. So I think it's just, you know, Bill, you and I are always dealing with the snail mail.
Yeah, that's true.
And I see, and Alexis made a good point too, because depending on how your mail system is, she's like, at least I wasn't told. So hopefully no one like just put it someplace else and thought it was, you know, we have some very wonderful administrative assistants who are diligent and may decide to, you know, look at your mail and edit it out for you. At least I used to have my admin secretary was very good about protecting my mail. I was like, I want to see it first. But so hopefully that didn't happen to a few people. So it looks like a few people were saying, you know, Sharon was like, she doesn't have a school building. Oh, that's right. Some of our counselors are virtual counselors. So you may not have been in that list as well. This is a list that came from MSDE. So probably was asking for reporting of where you were. Yeah.
And then also because we got the information from them midsummer, it's going to be whatever they had updated from last year. So if it was last year's information, depends.
Yeah. So thank you. And then real quick before you, I know that previously in June, you had put a request in or talked about, and we can probably begin to have the conversation again about a website company. I was just thinking as you're looking at Multiview and thinking about money, I'm always seeing what I'm thinking. Could the cost of Multiview, if what we're making for Multiview, could that cover the cost of maybe hiring a website company to manage the website? That's one thing. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying, but that was just when I saw that going up to about 5,000.
That's actually not a bad idea because I think it was going to cost about 7,000 or 8,000 for the website company, and that's about what we're pulling in from Multiview. So
yeah,
that could generate enough money to maybe cover that.
Yeah, and then if I remember correctly, it was initial cost of about seven or
But
whatever.
then the yearly would be a lower cost, but there would definitely be an upkeep cost as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then Ali said, especially if we add another link. And so what we're thinking about right now, everybody, Bill manages 100% of our website, 100% of it. So any changes, anything. And he's a full-time school counselor. Jackie's like, I need him to be doing school counseling stuff and not be managing the MSCA website. And he does. Jackie, he does. He only responds, like he'll respond at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. in the morning and then in the evening. So he never is doing this during the day. I can vouch for that. But and a dad too, exactly. And a husband. He got a whole bunch of other stuff going on that his family is not happy for us to be always bugging him to make changes. But he does it and he does it well. But we're looking at maybe having a company who that is their job to do it. And that's why we give him a stipend, because he's doing it at probably 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. But a stipend would be helpful. And what we're thinking about maybe is if we move this from maybe a stipend, but maybe somebody that oversees the website company that we have hired, that is the job that we pay them to do to manage it. So maybe if you want to take a look at that, Bill, and then maybe put something together, and we can really explore that this is not a decision we're making. We'll bring it to, of course, to the general body to review. Yeah, and these days I get, I puked at 12 a.m. Oh, that's not good. So yeah, thank you.
Alexis brought up a good point too, Nikki, because that stipend money would go back into the budget. So that would be an additional $500 that could go towards paying for that.
Exactly. So yeah, so I would say if we can literally look at and see how we can maybe look at that might be really helpful. Make it more appealing for somebody else to to who would be willing to step in and to take this on as well, the website chair, because Bill does want to just be a member for a moment. So,
Nikki, can I put out one more thing real quick?
sure, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so I'm also, as part of the website, I'm also the one that kind of is responsible for doing the MSCA email. And we have a couple of members that I've sent them. What happens is it's a Google Mail. So you'll get an email from Google. You probably don't realize it's an email to kind of get your email from MSCA email set up. And you probably don't pay any attention to it. So Sharon, I just sent you one a little while ago. And Camille, I just sent you one a little while ago. You should be able to get on there, click on the Google Mail, and it'll guide you through it. This way you can open up your MSCA email and have that going. So.
Yes, I got mine's hooked up. So I got my merchandise one.
Perfect.
Yes, so now I'm good. I just have to get the merchandise store open.
Gotcha. And I can do that real quick for you. That's not a problem. It's just a
Alright.
matter of setting it up, and then each thing has to be turned on, but we could do that. We could talk separately as we go through the rest of this.
Okay.
Mhm.
I know that, oh, I'm muted. So moving ahead, I know that a few people have to drop off, and I understand it's Saturday morning. The social media communication.
Yep, that's me. So also just the secretary, I'll do a time check. It is 10:30, so we have about an hour and a half left. So I would try to be quick. So I just updated where we have new followers. I was talking about this a little bit earlier. Our top age range for Facebook is ages 35 to 54, but our top age range for Instagram is 25 to 34. And then Twitter does not give me those kind of breakdowns, but we do have the most followers on Twitter, which still always surprises and baffles me. And then I wanted to just talk about, again, the social media takeover. I know we talked about it at the last elected board meeting, but I wanted to actually get down some dates. So now that we're in October, we have, and I'll talk a little bit about this. So social media takeover, in previous years, we just did Instagram, but we can do Instagram, we can do Twitter, we could do Facebook, whichever you're most comfortable with. And essentially, it's usually a board member or a committee chair member that will have a week, and they will take over one of our social media accounts, and they will post things that they like. Some of the people have done really great videos. They've done tours of their office. They've shown off bulletin boards, talking about their role. So again, I know, like Maureen, you're really big into Twitter. So if you wanted to take over our Twitter for a week, you're more than welcome. I would work with that person to get them the passwords to log on. Nikki is always fantastic, whether she's on Instagram or Facebook. I love it when I get to see Nikki's face on those things. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You guys can always send me anything through my email. It says up here a Downey, but I prefer the secretary, because the secretary, I can't have notifications for everything, for all of my emails. So I have secretary and my personal email ping me right away. So if you email secretary, that is the better way to get a hold of me, because it will notify me right there. And most things I can do from my phone. I've talked about this before, but if you Sharon, with the store opening, when the store opens, let me know, and I would love to post that on social media to let people know. A lot of things I direct people directly back to the mascaonline.org, because it gets us more money through our merchandising. So I try to get them to go directly to the website and then click from there. But yeah, the school store opening, if you're having any events, we just advertised the Western Regional with Kathleen Clingan, your event. So just send me things. Just know that if it is a picture, anything on Facebook or any of the pictures on social media, the links do not work. So we have to make sure we're including those links. So if you just have a hyperlink that says click here, it's going to look silly. So we have to make sure we're incorporating that differently, because hyperlinks do not work in pictures on social media. But that's pretty, oh, and then I just always do a push. If you do follow us on social media, and Kathleen, you were great last year when you did the takeover, so I'm glad you'll do it again. Sign up for a month. or a week. It's not a full month. It's just a week. The other thing I was going to say, if you don't follow us on social media, please do. If you do already follow us, like, share, add people. When you see events, invite all of your friends, your counselor friends, because the more anyone clicks on them, the more they're going to show up in people's feeds. So it's all an algorithm that Facebook and Instagram utilize. And so when you see something, I know a lot of you already know about that event or you're already planning on going, but like I made an event for this, and the more people that are attending, the more that's going to pop up in people's feeds. So just throwing that out there. And this one, I do not want to give up. So even though secretary, I am opening that position. I love being the social media coordinator. I think it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing it from my phone. So please feel free to share things with me. But if you want to work with me, I would love that. But it's a lot of fun doing it. And I do hope to keep this role.
All right, thank you. It does a wonderful job. So thank you so much. And thank you for keeping us engaged in social media. So it is a huge job, but it's really valuable and it's a great way to be involved. So thank you. So sign up for a week. I already signed up for October 10th through the 15th. And even, and so this is even for people who are not in a school base. So I'm at the university level, but I'll share that end of it, teaching classes, talking to grad students and all of that sort of stuff. All right, professional development activities. Ed Reed actually is going to be moderating the conversation with the gubernatorial candidates. So he is helping to coordinate that with moderating and setting up the questions and all of that sort of thing for that professional development activity. It's not less of a professional development, that's definitely advocacy, but it's going to be a collaboration professional development advocacy. So that's the most up-to-date information that is happening. For the confirmed date we have is October the 14th for the one with Westmore, and we'll keep you posted for the one with Dan Cox. And equity and social justice, the racial equity and social justice, Nia Buta, she sent me the date for the second Thursday of the month. And so that is this upcoming Thursday is the committee, their first committee meeting. They did not meet in October, but they are meeting they did not meet in September, but they are meeting October the 13th at 5 p.m. Online will be the Racial Equity and Social Justice Committee. They meet at 5 p.m. And it's on the calendar, but when she sends me the link for the meeting link, I'll send that out. And then Holly, I'll turn it over to Holly for legislative and advocacy.
All right, can you guys hear me? Okay, good. All right, so Legislative Concerns and Advocacy Committee, it's going to be a big deal this year that we do have a lobbying firm that is going to be helping us out. Because as much as I have learned over the last few years about legislative process, there is so much work that happens prior to the legislative session. So the 2023 legislative session for Maryland starts in January. I believe it's January 11th. And so there's a lot of work that happens prior to that to try to get us a seat at the different tables where we have a voice on the laws that get implemented. So the first one that's on the list is about the career ladder. So for those school counselors who are NBCTs, this has been a big concern as far as we have the same credential as teachers that are getting the $10,000 bonus pay for having that credential, but we are not included because of a statute that pre-existed before the blueprint. So when the definition of teacher and teacher of record, because of how it was interpreted, we are not receiving that salary enhancement. The thing is then because of that, we're also not included on the career ladder anywhere. When I reached out to lawmakers last year, they were surprised because they thought that we would be included under teacher. So they didn't know because they had proposed a law that would include some other student support services personnel on the career ladder, like school psychologists, social workers, PPWs. And I said, well, we're nowhere at the moment. So that is something that we're working on. And the way to do that, it's like 2 steps back to make 1 step forward with Scott Tiffin, who's our lobbying point of contact. He is going to be working with me to set up an appointment with a legislator. And what they have to do is make a formal request of the Attorney General to get an interpretation of that statute that says that school counselors, if we are not defined as teachers, and the position comes back as no, school counselors cannot be included in that, then that will determine our next steps about what we need to do to advocate for us to be included on the career ladder. So that's that part. And as far as working with our state delegates, what I would like to do, we did have a listening session. Thank you to Nikki for getting that all set up. We did have a listening session with Scott. So really, we've been trying to educate Scott on what our role is and what our concerns are. And then what I would like to do is be able to give school counselors an opportunity to talk directly to legislators, because like Marianne was talking about, the direct impact on school counselors when there's a law that's passed regarding school counselors being involved with financial aid, then when you're able to talk about how long does it take to work with an individual student on a FAFSA application, and what's the impact of that law being passed on your workload, and if you're doing evening events and how that might interfere with what your contract actually says. Those are the types of things that when lawmakers are saying, we want to make sure that students have access to financial aid to go to college, that sounds like a great idea, but they might not realize what that means as far as how that impacts your role. So I'll be working with Scott on trying to set that up. And what that has looked like, just so that you're aware, I know some of us have done this before through ASCA as well, where you are given a schedule, and especially if you are a constituent of a lawmaker, we would try to pair you up with your lawmaker so that you can educate them on the role of school counseling at your level, whether it's elementary, middle, or high. And then we would give you talking points. So there might be particular bills that a legislator has been a co-sponsor on, or it's up for a vote, and you would be able to talk about what your concerns are, or whether it's something that will benefit you or your students. And if you are a constituent or your students are constituents of that lawmaker, then it gives them more of an understanding of how their vote impacts what happens to the people that live in their district. So we'll be working on that. And then there are a couple work groups that Scott was able to highlight, and I'm hoping the link works. If someone would click that link and make sure it works, see if thank you, Allie. Yes, thank you. Okay, so the Department of, I'm going to get them mixed up, but there is a work group that's being formed on Black, Latino, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and other underrepresented behavioral health professionals, because they want to make sure that there is representation of underrepresented groups and students who are going to try to be accessing behavioral health. And I would love it if we could have several school counselors apply for that. We have people that are in perfect position to be able to talk about the lack of representation or the lack of mental health resources for students. So that would be terrific if we had a bunch of you guys, if you're interested in sitting on that work group. There's also another one, Workforce Commission, about healthcare workers. And this is one I tapped Tracy to do it, and she was like, okay, all right, I'll volunteer. So you can, Tracy, you're welcome to speak up if you'd like to on this one. But I figured if we have a school counselor who is working at a community school, because you're working probably in even closer partnership with the health room at your school, because you're helping with the wraparound services, if that is something that you would like to have a voice at that table, and are talking about the difficulty of staffing healthcare positions, including school health. So you've probably seen the impact of there not being enough nurses or health assistants in your schools. And since community schools with the wraparound services is part of the blueprint, specifically, if that is a particular interest to you, you can reach out to me or to Tracy, because she's already doing a lot, and I'm sure she would love to spread the wealth. So Tracy, if you're available and you want to talk about that, you're welcome to.
I don't have much to say about that, Holly, right now, but I do know that with the change with the community schools and social worker and all the services together, there are lots of challenges with it. So I'm very interested in talking more and trying to figure out how we can improve. I mean, it's very new with everything that's happening now, but I can't wait to talk further about that.
Great. All right. So I see Maureen has talked about that. So it might be something that Tracy, if you want to do like a work group, but not necessarily have the ability, because I don't know what the time commitment is, it would be Scott Tiffin is the one who was giving me the information on that workforce commission. So I don't know exactly what the time commitment is. And I know Tracy had reached out to him, but if that's something that you would be able to work with Tracy on, that would be terrific. And I think that's all I have at the moment. Are there questions that people have about what's going to happen? I'm thinking right now, Nikki and I have been meeting once a month with Scott Tiffin the first Tuesday of every month. So I'm thinking that I might hold legislative concerns evening kind of listening sessions or committee meetings the first Thursday of every month. So it would be 2 days after I meet with Scott, because then I can turn around and provide information to people quickly on that. So the first one I think will be in November.
Holly, can you clarify? I don't know that I understand that term. Like, what is considered a community school?
So that is a specific term that's through the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, that certain schools that have reached a certain threshold of free and reduced students or direct certification, that they have qualified as a community school, and therefore they have additional personnel and money that goes towards having personnel at those schools.
So is that like in conjunction with Title I? Because everything you described sounds to me like a Title I school, or is it separate?
It sounds like Title I, but not all Title I schools are community schools.
Okay.
And I just put in the link. It's really kind of sticky because I think it's only 360 schools that are community schools, and MSDE determined that criteria. Well, not MSD. No, I don't want MSD be upset. That criteria was described by a work group, correct? And so that is that determination. So even if you're at a Title I school, does not necessarily mean that you will be identified as a community school. Tracy.
And just Zia Moore, it's run pretty much like a Title I school. So the spending, the way they spend for Title I schools and all the documentation, it's the same thing. And basically with the idea of community schools is that within a 5-year period, the community has enough knowledge and advocacy where they're able to pretty much run the community schools themselves. This is our 2nd years of community school, so we're not there yet at my particular school, and funds can be cut like a Title I school, but it's pretty much the same spending, but it's more just what surveying the needs of the community, the staff and the parents thought a survey about what needs they may need, such for, like, say if they need like GED classes, or like in my community the parents wanted like English classes so they can learn how to speak English, so we're offering those things, but it's based on what the families, parents and staff want for the school.
Thank you for that. I hadn't heard that term before.
And with the blueprint, the percentage, it's going to increase the number of community schools that are identified as community schools over time. So they have like the baseline now, but then they're going to be changing the thresholds so that there'll be an increasing number of schools identified as community schools.
Thank you so much, Holly. And I think that, and as Holly was saying, yes, and you'll be hearing from us because what we're finding through being involved and having a lobbyist is that he is really making sure that when they're having these work groups, because a lot of times from these work groups, ideas come up to have laws and a variety of different things. And so he is making sure to really include us or making sure that there is a representative of school counseling at these work groups. So as we get these opportunities, you will also be hearing from us. I think there's another work group. We have MSDE and MHEC has reached out to have a work group with increasing participation in post-secondary school. They've asked us to identify 3 people. And I've sent those 3 people, but then they've asked for more. So I will be reaching out, we'll be reaching out. So certainly please connect with me, with Holly, because we definitely want many voices at the table. So there will be, hopefully our goal is to have a lot of opportunity to serve on a variety of different work groups. Typically, I will be honest, the work groups usually are happening during the school day because they're meeting just like we're meeting. So those things can happen and do happen typically during the school day, but I'm finding more of them are virtual as opposed to coming in person. So I think that they're using these virtual platforms as opportunities so that are there. Oh, Jonathan saying here's a thank you, Jonathan, put a presentation on community schools. And so thank you, Jonathan. And we should, if we can, get the one retired, to do some stuff during the workday. Yes, that would be, we probably need more than just one, but that would be great to have. That would be great. That would be ideal. And the full-time nurse position has been difficult to fill. Okay, yeah. Jonathan, you had a hand, and Tracy, do you still have your hand up or was that previously?
Oh yeah, I was just going to add that there should be a playbook on community schools that will be released. I was just checking the MSDE's website for the community schools webpage for that playbook. I thought it had been published, but it hasn't yet. And that's kind of more of an engaging document that has additional resources in it. We used to have a community schools director, Tanya Filson, who she left a couple months ago. I believe she's teaching back in Howard County. So the position's currently vacant and looking to be filled hopefully soon. But yeah, certainly I can, once that playbook becomes available, I can certainly send it to Nikki to share with the group.
That'd be perfect. Thank you. And so yes, we definitely want your involvement, and yes, it would be great. We also do want retired, but we do want a lot of times on these work groups having practicing school counselors are key, because you a lot of times they'll be having decisions or conversations about what school counselors and what we're doing, and you can be like, hey, that's not what we do. But a retiree can also speak to that. All right, thank you, Holly. Thank you so much. So look out for Holly and the committee meetings. All right, next we have our ethics person, and she had to head out. Carolyn Thorpe, she had another appointment, so unfortunately she had to head to leave out. So let me actually remove the share.
She did text me, so I can just quickly speak to, she does want all of the committee chairs to please include her on your meeting minutes. Because one of the things she'll be looking at is just kind of making sure that everything is operating ethically. And she said to mention that as far as the actual committee, she is starting the ASCA ethics specialist training. And then once she finishes, she wants to be able to come back at the next general body meeting with some ideas on how she wants to move the committee forward based on the information that she's learned in the training. But she does want to make sure that she has access to people's committees meeting minutes so that she's kind of in the loop on all the workings that are going on. And that was it from Carolyn.
Thank you. Yeah, she's really excited, and we're really excited to have her with us. Recent grad, Howard County school counselor, very excited. All right, Miss Sharon Grimes, merchandise.
Okay, hold on. Okay, so I got a storage unit today. So I'll be moving the stuff from my house to the storage unit. So the storage unit I put there was it's $87 a month. So the original budget was $1,500. So with the storage unit, I would have to just request to have like an additional $1,000 to purchase more merchandise. So I'm working on getting in contact with people so we can get more merchandise. We can purchase more merchandise, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and then also I'm looking into because I need packaging supplies too. So you have to get all that stuff as well. But yeah, that's all.
Oh, good, I'm not muted. So what I'm hearing you say, which is great, I'm so happy that we have the storage unit, which is perfect, that's there. So that increase for the additional for the budget would just be right now, and I think the budget is locked, but that doesn't mean that you can't spend. We would just know that we would probably need to identify where that is coming from. And then for the upcoming year, we would maybe need to make a modification for the budget. Does that make sense?
Okay.
And so
So because if the storage, so if the budget was only 1,500, but now we got the storage unit. So, having the storage unit, it only gives me $456 left over for merchandise, which.
So what'll happen, Sharon, is you go ahead and spend, and then at the end of the year, when in our June meeting, and we see that you're $1,500 over budget, then that's when we'll say, okay, clearly merchandise needs more money. But we won't add to the actual budget now, but it doesn't mean that you can't spend. That's what we were saying.
Oh, so I can spend.
Yes, you can
Okay,
spend.
hello.
Yeah, it's okay to because it's new. Like
Yeah,
you can go over budget on something, and then when we discuss in the budget meeting in June, we would say, okay, yes, I was over by 1,200, but that was a one-time thing. Or because of this storage, I need my budget to be 2,500 so that I can have all the money for packaging as well as the money for new merchandise. The hope would be that you'll start to balance out and you'll be able to then set a goal. You can see if you click earlier on the agenda where it says budget review under my report, you can see where everybody kind of sets a goal of this is how much I need, but this is how much I plan to make.
Yeah.
So as you're purchasing, Nikki and I always tease, you're the model. We need to get you some pictures of you with these MSCA merchandise on the website. The more we sell, then it'll balance out. And we want to make sure that we're not just upping the budget and not getting anything back in return for it. So we can't just buy a whole bunch of stuff and then nothing is selling. You know what I mean?
Yes. Okay.
And
I'm
I think
understanding what you're putting down.
And then I think as we're looking at doing it, it's hopefully the other parties will have some, like CM Water was saying, some revenue coming in with that to kind of with the merchandise. So if we are pricing it accordingly, so you probably need to look at the pricing for shipping and all of that sort of stuff. So that way, when you are looking at the items that you're purchasing, the packaging, the shipping, that we are pricing it to make sure that that is all covered in the cost of the item. So those things are covered in that cost of those things. Do we need pictures from the rest of wearing our gear? Some of us could possibly send. Sure, I'm sure. But I think what we're looking at is, I don't know whether whether Sharon, if we're getting new material, new things, because Sharon, we're kind of going down or moving down with some of our merchandise and some of our things. So I think that's what we're also looking at, is what we have and what we're going to start. So Sharon is kind of doing a whole overhaul of merchandise. And then
That's what I was going to ask. Sharon, did you already order new stuff? Are you ordering stuff? Are you still trying to get rid of old stuff? Like some of us have the stuff that you might still have in stock if you need new pictures. Like I know Nikki always has some really great stuff that she wears, but I don't know what just let us know if you have stuff in stock you're trying to sell and need pictures.
Okay. Yeah. So it's pretty much gonna be like it's just gonna be like a new thing. But there is old merchandise that I do have and that has to sell, but I'm just like working out all the kinks right now, just kind of really starting from scratch with this merchandise.
Oh, I'm muted. I saw Marianne was saying about a question about the exchange policy. And I think the biggest challenge with exchange is because this isn't Sharon's full-time, business. I think that makes it hard. I think that's probably why Leslie didn't have an exchange, because, the process of receiving it, crediting it, because I think also then, that would loop in a conversation, so we can include Xiomara, Sharon, all of those people that Sharon has to do the leg piece of it, and then
my bigger concern would be we're not in a position like in Amazon to just trash an item, right? If it comes back, we're not going to give someone else a shirt that someone else has worn and put on. So then it just becomes a stockpile of stuff we can't sell. So that would be my only concern budget wise, is if we allowed for exchange, like you can, I don't know. Yeah, that's probably a larger conversation as Sharon starts building the store, but there's definitely concern with being able to do that. And I think if you're concerned with online shopping, then that tends to be why people will shop at the conference.
But I think because not everyone is able to make those in-person events, like I 100% hear the, the difficulty, in terms of bandwidth, right? I mean, that's, Sharon needing to accept that stuff, send it back. I also hear the concern of trying things on and sending it back. I think in that case, if we have tags or something, obviously we couldn't accept things that either don't have the tags on it, or if it's clearly been worn and things like that, we wouldn't accept it. But, we certainly have people try on things when we are in person. So, I assume people are, washing the things before they wear them. So I think maybe a bigger conversation than maybe we have time for right now, but it was something I wanted to mention. If we aren't really getting people to buy things on the store, and if none of that is possible, it's understandable. But then kind of as Nina put in the chat, I think it would be helpful to have perhaps a better description for sizing, if we are able to do that, which again is still work to do, but could be.
I would say if we can give, because I don't want to run Sharon off. So this is her very first meeting, her very first. And so I think I want to if we can give Sharon a moment to get acclimated to all of the things in the structure. And I think we can then see how things are moving, because we haven't opened the store recently. And I don't think online selling was a challenge, but I don't know. And so we can see how that is. And then Sharon, maybe you can then provide, some thought process in terms of, as you are navigating all of those components of posting, putting it up, sending out things, responding to emails, all of those things. You could then maybe come back to us and kind of say, this is what's working, this is what isn't working. And that could be really helpful, since you're the one-man shop right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, I think that works out. Let me just, get my gears in line and get everything together, and then go from there.
And certainly, Sharon wasn't trying to add more work for you in this case, but it was something that I noticed, and I was like, before I forget about it, let me just say it. And then of course, whenever is a good time to revisit that, we can do so. But I wanted to at least mention it, since I know in the past, we would have, some conversation about, oh, no one's ordering from the store, or we're having limited, interest and things like that. So just wanted to mention it, and certainly it can be, considered way down the line, especially Sharon, once you do get acclimated and everything. But thanks for doing it, because it is a big lift.
Thank you. No, I think it's great. And I think Allie put in there also considering ordering. So when you're looking at ordering things, Sharon, things that are non-wearable things. Like right now, actually one little thing, and then with my sorority gave us these little privacy things. I can't even, but if I cover right now, you can't see me. It's like a little thing that goes over that covers, and it has my sorority letters, but we could have something that has MSCA, which I thought was the smallest little thing, but it's like, that is so cute to put over. So non-wearable. I was gonna say non-perishable, non-wearable items. We could look at doing and stuffing, including those in there. Yeah, so, all right. And could we yes, we could also definitely look at things for School Council of the Year. No, not School Council. National School Counseling Week. We can add those things in there. All right. And we talked earlier with the mentoring committee. So we'll move through. Thank you so much, everybody. And moving along, Dr. Scott, I actually saw him last night, but I know that I don't see him on today, so we don't have a report from him. But moving to regions, Southern Regional Rep, I know that Laura's been meeting with everyone, so Jackie, I don't know if you have anything.
But I missed the last meeting. I got too many email accounts. But Laura, I just sent you a message that I will not be missing another meeting. And if anybody was on the call and can share their minutes with me, please, please, please do. But we are, Bill Marcioni, one more thing that he's helping with is he's helping me develop a workshop for the Southern Maryland region. We just recently kind of reconnected or reestablished our partnership in Charles County with St. Mary's College, and they are anxious to have groups come out. And so we've started some preliminary conversations about having a possible workshop there. So that's what I would like to have. And we want to look at things like in Dr. Ham and I have already talked, data. Getting my counselors used to comfortable with data and using it to drive their counseling program. So that's a possible topic that we're looking at. I also am interested in some things around trauma and how to best help our students. So if you know folks that might want to do a presentation or speak on either one of those topics or another topic that you might think might be interesting, let me know. But again, that's what we're just starting to do with the Southern region folks, is just trying to get the word out that we would like to do it in person if we can. In December is what we're looking at. The first week of December is a tentative time frame. As soon as we get some confirmations from St. Mary's College, we will put some more final stuff in action. But that's the plan for Southern Maryland. Thank you all.
And thank you, Nikki, for the recommendation. We emailed Dr. Young and Dr. Kaffenberger. We're waiting to hear back from them.
Perfect. Thank you. And let me know if I can help with anything. So yes, absolutely. All right. Our Eastern Shore. So a great group from the East. I don't know if Kate is on, or Kate, who is our former graduate school representative and now is a school counselor on the Eastern Shore, or Rose, who is a counselor at Worcester County. I have learned to say that correctly, Worcester County. So if they are not there, they may not be on right now. So we don't have a report at this time, but we're looking forward to hearing from them. And then we have Cece Braun, who is our new counselor in Baltimore. So I'll allow Cece to share the Northern Regional.
I think Cece had to leave. I think she posted that in the chat. Yes.
Okay, great. So I know Cece was attending the meeting. So Cece is a brand new counselor as well. A recent grad and new counselor in Baltimore County. So no report at this time. I know Daniela Hilton is new to us, but not a new counselor. She's new serving. She's a school counselor in Montgomery County. And currently, I know that she reached out and she doesn't have a report at this time. She's kind of getting her sea legs. But again, I know that Laura has been meeting with the regional reps. So they had a meeting, and I know they'll be meeting again to kind of identify upcoming programming regional wise. And that leads us to throw it to the Western County, Kathleen. Upcoming event.
All right, so we did meet with Laura probably about a week or so ago. Just for everybody's purposes, when we met with Laura, a couple things that we did, we shared out, we had written a letter, I think it was last year, and I kind of modified it and then shared that out that region reps can send out to their regions if they choose. Just talking about membership, things that are coming up. We also talked about, and I think this was a great idea, each region is kind of looking for like a month where they're planning something so that we're not, all kind of on top of each other as far as planning. Western region has a workshop coming up on Friday. I really have to give almost all of the credit, if not all, to Laura. Laura really put that together. I just helped with the advertising. We did have a speaker drop out, so I was able to find a speaker to replace that. So this coming Friday, we are meeting with Western Region counselors and possibly some Maryland state counselors because we opened it up about 10 days ago to everybody in Deep Creek Lake. And we're having 4 presentations. One is on trauma, and that's actually being presented by the Frederick County's Elementary School Counselor of the Year from last year. Her name's Heather Quill. We had somebody drop out and that was the replacement. And she's very interested in presenting. Some of them are presentations that MSCA members might have seen in the past. I think we tapped a few people like the presentation about it's not just you, kids are different today. We're having that for the Western region. And then there's one on LGBTQIA+, and then another on group counseling activities. So 4 different presentations. Lunch is going to be provided. I think we're doing some bags too. I'm trying to connect with Laura on that. It's coming from, we used to have something in this region called the Western Maryland School Counselor Conference because we kind of have the same problem as the Eastern region, wherein like the counselors all the way in Allegheny and Garrett, they have to travel pretty far to get some things. It's not as bad for Frederick and Washington. So that's why it's placed there. So I'm excited about it to see how it goes. I would definitely, Allie will send you some pictures and things for social media so we can pump it up. Bill, do you happen to have the number of people that have signed up? I know Allegheny County reached out and they signed up a bunch of their counselors. So.
Give me 1 second.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
I'm going to connect with the presenters and just let them know how many to expect. I think we were able to accommodate up to 100. For a while we were at 30, but I'm hoping we bumped up a little bit more. So yeah, so that's going to be our event for this year. And then I'm happy to help the other region reps as I can. Like I said, Laura really helped me. So help the other region reps. And Bill says 44, which isn't 100, but 40, it's a lot more than we did last year. So again, slow progress. So.
And I was say, I see a good question in the chat about if the conference is going to be recorded, and even being paid, paid recordings are fine, but if it's going to be recorded.
I don't think that that's something that we even considered just because of Deep Creek Lake not knowing how the tech would be and things like that. So that's something that maybe as region reps we can consider for other workshops. But I don't think we could pull that off by Friday, to be realistic. All right, and that's it for me.
Thank you so much. And I'm excited. I think I confirmed, I think once it opened up, I registered. I think need to double check, but I think so to just map it out and see the length. But I'm excited to be there.
It's a pretty drive. It's not a hard drive, so perfect. You're gonna go through Sidling Hill. It'll be fun.
Yeah, a cup of coffee and a good book on tape. That's what I did. All right, thank you. And Alexis, Independent School.
I think she left, Nikki.
She left? Okay, wonderful. Well, not wonderful that she left, but not wonderful that she left because Alexis is great. And I think that one of the things I will say that, and I'm glad, thank you, Atia, for highlighting, because those are some great activities. And I think particularly independent schools, we have more and more counselors that are attending independent schools, supporting students of color at independent schools. So I definitely think that that could be some wonderful collaboration in providing that. And I know Alexis is very passionate about that. And Jonathan, I don't know if you're still here. I know you've been chiming in. I don't know if you have anything else you want to share in addition. And he may have left. 'Cause I know.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. No, I just want to say, again, I forgot to mention at the top, I came into school counseling as a school counselor myself. I've worked 7 years in Baltimore City schools and then supervised school counseling for 3 years in city schools. And now working at the state, I help support school counseling programs. So all that to say that I understand how important the role is, and I just am so appreciative of each and every one of you, especially at the school level, because you're right there with the kids and the students and families at the ground level or at the school level, just really making the impact and the difference. And so just want to thank you for everything that you do, and then taking time out of your personal lives on the weekend to just to continue and advance this work and help make gains for all students and families and our colleagues, who are also school counselors in the field. That's how, that's how student performance and well-being improves and how the profession improves. So I just want to say, on behalf of MSDE, how much we really appreciate each and every one of you and all the hard work that you do. And, please, if there's anything that we can do to help and support that and try and remove barriers, we're certainly dedicated to doing that. But really just want to say thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you so much, Jonathan, and thank you. And we enjoy the partnership that we have. So I think that can make it, at least I believe it's helpful in the work that we're doing. So, and thank you for your support. So thank you. All right, and moving along, we are moving. Currently, right now, I don't think we have any unfinished business as of right now. So we're just getting started this year, but new business from Atia. Atia, you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So super quickly, the Maryland Counseling Association has a space for a MSCA liaison. This school year, they're meeting on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. when I'm teaching. If my class gets out early, I attend and provide any updates that I know about. But I know for a fact that I miss so much of the awesome things that you all are doing that I just don't know about. And so I provided the dates of the meetings on the agenda, and I can send along the Zoom link for whoever the MSCA liaison is. I don't know who that is or who would like to take it. But if that doesn't fit with your schedule, please feel free to pass along any updates you would like me to share and or pass along to the MCA secretary for the meeting minutes, because there is a space for us there. And we do have, MCA does have actually quite a few graduate students who are in the school counseling programs. And so I'm like, go on over to MSCA. And so if there's anything that I can share while I'm talking or while I'm present about MSCA, I make sure to do that.
And I just sent, I'm sending you an email, and I sent the email to Maureen, and I apologize. In my moving and transitioning from president, typically that's the role that president-elect has done. So when I was president-elect, I served and attended those meetings. They were, at that time, they were on a certain date. And so they just rotated all over the time. So they'll be on a Sunday evening, on a Tuesday night.
Right, exactly.
It was interesting. And so I will reach out to you and Maureen, and then we can identify. Because it is, I will tell you, when I served in that capacity as president-elect, it was helpful to talk about, as we were having an overlap of activities or resources or information, just having that voice, because many times there are people who work in the school who are also working and providing counseling services, and we collaborate with. And so it's helpful to us to maybe continue with the collaboration.
Definitely.
Yes, Ciamora, I see your hand up.
Two things. One, I just wanted to say that's definitely it. I know that we've talked in the past about how the president-elect job is very already overwhelming. And that's definitely something I would be interested in doing if that was like a separate position. But also one of the things that I wondered if we might want to consider, switching gears just a second for new business, is the order of our agenda. We tend to start out really strong at 9 a.m. And then around 10:30, 11, we start to kind of fall off as people need to leave. So I wondered if it might be worth our time to do either like a rotating schedule or have the region reps and committee heads report out first, as the elected board members tend to be the ones that stick around till the end. But it is something that we started doing in Howard County that's been helpful, so that it's not always the same people that don't get to report, if that makes sense.
It does.
So just wanted to throw that idea out there.
All right, thank you. No, that's
We
helpful.
don't want to change the order. We could, yeah, I know like oftentimes if one of us has to leave, like I know Bill and I in the past, like we've just said, hey, can we report out earlier or anything like that? So if we don't want to just change the order, we can always just, if anyone needs to leave early, we can, preface that. But I do like that suggestion too. That's an interesting one.
Thank you. No, I think that's helpful. And we can definitely do that. And I've included touch base with Maureen. I think it's the biggest part we just, and again, I apologize, is just having the continuity of that the relationship with MSCA. So, but again, we didn't have someone serve last year. So it is where that maybe got lost in that process, but we want to continue with that strong relationship. All right. And I see as we're beginning to wind down, we're still holding strong with 18 members or attendees. We have Kathleen, you have your hand up, and then we also have Scott, who has joined us to provide an opportunity to be available. So, wait a minute. And okay, so I have something to share, but go ahead, Kathleen, go ahead.
Sorry, I was multitasking about the Western Region Workshop. Are we in the new business section? Because I just had something I wanted to ask. Okay. All right. We didn't talk at all about like local affiliations and that process for like, if you have we have the Frederick County organization. I know Ziamara has Howard County. Are we still doing like the fill out the Google form to be affiliated with MSCA?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we
Yeah.
might just want to, I guess, send that back out, or maybe we have and I've missed it. It's very possible. So
it's a lot going on. So on that note as well, I will apologize. That is probably a part of as president. And I'm very excited. This is the last year. And so I will make sure I add that on my to-do list and put that out. So and those who are not familiar with Kathleen was sharing is that we have wonderful affiliate chapters, which are great affiliate groups. And so they are doing phenomenal work in their regions. They're a little bit different than regional reps because regional reps work directly internally within MSCA, but these affiliate groups are independently working within their different counties or cities. Baltimore City has an affiliate group as well as Baltimore County, and they're doing some awesome work. And so we like to meet on a regular, very regular, consistent basis to provide support, to kind of collaborate, to talk about what's going on. And yes, and it's, just like we're an affiliate of ASCA. And so we meet with, as the state of Maryland, we get support from ASCA. We try and support our local county level and city affiliate groups as much as possible with awesome work that they're doing to serve their members, and then being able to coordinate efforts. So yes, so I can definitely, I'm going to add that to my to-do and send that out as well. And then the other information that I have on here, new information, is the National Association of School Social Workers. Maryland is having, and let me share my, is having a conference this upcoming, that same day, Friday, October the 14th. It's at Bowie State University. Thank you for that then. And so definitely consider joining and attending. They have a virtual link as well. I'm going to attend on behalf of MSCA to represent, because we are working more and more. Many school systems are working collaboratively and have more and more school social workers and school counselors working together. And really, I want to make sure also, as we spend more time in the upcoming months and the months ahead is really being clear about our roles and who we are and what we do. And also the idea is that hopefully this has not become some sort of territory. There is more than enough mental health need that's out there. There's a major mental health need. And so we all can be at the table. And I think it's just also important to understand our role and who we are. I was recently in a meeting and the conversation was like, we don't do mental health. And I'm like, yeah, but we do. And so, so people's job descriptions are coming up and all of that. So I'm looking to maybe post and with just our members, host a session with, I am very good friends with a colleague that is in Howard County. She's director of social workers in Howard County, and really having a conversation to have a real honest conversation about who we are and what we do. And we have a unique perspective because we work together. She was my school social worker and I was a school counselor, and we worked together. So I've actually worked with a school social worker, and we worked together for a while to really provide support for students in the school. So we've talked about maybe hosting something where we can share how we did that, what that looked like. And I was very clear. I still did mental health. I still ran groups. I still met with students individually. She, though, worked with our students. If you're looking for at the MTSS system, she worked with our tier 1 students. So she worked with the students when things went like real. Like she worked with a small, like 1% of the population, and I provided support for everybody else. And it was, to me, a blessing because then I could do all of the things I needed to do. So we're going to look to maybe put something on the books to have that meeting and that conversation. Because that was ideal and it worked really well. So the next part, yes, and people are saying, and I think that's it too. It's also about that partnership. See, what I just said is awesome and super supportive and collaborative. And that's it too, is really, people are people. So sometimes if you run across some people that are not as collaborative, I don't know if it's social work or just being people. So that might be a factor in it too. All right. And then as we are winding down, we will use the remaining of the time for the good of the group. Any suggestions? Oh, changing the layout of the meeting. So regional reps report out sooner, make a rotating agenda. So that's that idea. And our next meeting is Saturday, December the 3rd at 9 a.m. And then future meetings are then in March and June 23rd. So our goal, hopefully, is we got out a little bit earlier today, but we're not necessarily dismissing earlier. We have using the remaining of the time, because this is a general body meeting, to turn it over to our lobbyist, Scott Tiflin, who is here. He came earlier to kind of answer any questions and really provide a listening session. We did this on Wednesday with our members. And so we wanted to provide another opportunity to be flexible and accommodating. And this isn't our last listening session, but this is initial part of it. So, you're free to stay, but you're also free to leave. And so maybe one of the things we can do in December is flip it and have Scott be the first thing at 9 in the morning and go that way too. So we can also do it that way as well. But I think that if you want to have an opportunity to, Scott, if you want to share who you are, what you do, and then have members as you want to share out concerns that members, if you want to share concerns that you have and you would like the paid, because we're paying him, not him, but his company, to be our lobbyist.
Yeah, so like Nikki said, my name is Scott Tiffin, and I work for a group called Public Policy Partners. It's been around for probably 20 or so years, and we primarily lobby on issues. I'd say probably 90% of our work is kind of a mixture of like health, mental health, and education related stuff. We have a couple other smaller little things that make up the last little bit of time, but probably a good chunk, close to 90%, is kind of like in those universes. And so we somewhat recently were retained by the School Counselor Association. I can't remember, it's a couple months ago, to support your guys's advocacy efforts, legislative efforts. And so as Nikki mentioned, on Wednesday, we had a kind of a listening session of sorts with some members to just try to get some feedback on things that folks are thinking about, things that folks are worried about, just so as we're kind of preparing for the legislative session starting in January, we have some kind of ideas on what we might want to be looking at for some of our priorities or just things to keep in mind. A big part of this is also just helping me better understand, what issues school counselors are kind of facing, in their schools. So I have as much time as folks want to chat. Happy to answer any questions too, if that is helpful to folks. But also take notes on any kind of issues that you guys want to at least put on my personal radar, just so I kind of have some better ideas.
So Nikki, I can chime in a little bit on this one. So in the listening session, what I did is I wrote down what I predicted would be the top 3 concerns. And it was pretty accurate, where number 1 was caseload. So talking about school counselors with an overwhelming caseload. And now with some of the additional blueprint legislation that is put more responsibility on school counselors, that then leads directly to caseload issues. Because if you're required by law to meet with every student on certain things or teach lessons on certain topics, the more students you have, the more difficult it is to be able to get that done, right? And then the second one was non-counseling duties, and there was quite a healthy discussion about 504s and what is appropriate and inappropriate for us to be part of. And then that kind of bleeds into the whole ASCA model and COMAR regulations about 80% direct service to students versus 20% indirect. So if you have comments on those or on other concerns, that would be great for Scott to hear.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So, hi, I'm Jackie Chavez from Charles County, Maryland. I know one of the biggest concerns with our school counselors, especially the last couple of years, is, and that maybe kind of falls under that other duties kind of thing, but we're being pulled more frequently to sub in classrooms. So that is something that is a very hot topic in a lot of our meetings, because we are actually now a part of a flow chart of folks that are being called on, and we're literally the first people after we run out of subs that they call on. So yeah, so it is a big deal in my county if there's anything that's can be done. And I just found out recently that our PPWs, which are like our social workers and psychs, aren't called because it's actually a law that they have that prevents that from happening. So my question is, why don't we have that law? I don't know if this is the right platform to even ask this question, but that's, I know from our county, it's something that's very, very, it's big on our list of what's going on here.
And that's super interesting. And in particularly, I wasn't aware that there is a legal barrier on social workers or school psychologists being subs. So that's something I can definitely, I'm sure can probably pretty easily pull up, or maybe go to the library and pull up to at least get a better sense of why that is, when that happened, why you guys were carved out of it, or how that decision was made. I also apologize for watching my in-laws' dogs, and they run around a lot. So if you hear a lot of running in the background, it's my in-laws' dogs.
It must be something going on, because mine is barking as well. What's happening? Is there a storm coming?
There is a storm. At least here in Baltimore, there is a storm.
Yeah.
So good.
Oh no, I was going to say, I think also reach out to your to the other counties, because for example, I don't want to speak definitively, but I'm pretty sure Montgomery County might be able to speak to this. But I know that to even be considered a sub or to be used that way, there was an additional fee that they had to, and I can find out because I know my husband, that they had to pay the above and beyond your hourly rate. You would have to pay school counselors this additional fee that is above and beyond, that it eventually was just like, that's okay. And you didn't have to definitively, you did not have to say yes or no. And this is during the day, like if you were coverage. Yeah, that's correct in Frederick County as well. So you didn't have to say okay to it. You could say no. But if I do it, this is the fee. And then your hour, you start your hour, you keep a log of it. And you say, for these 3 hours, this is when I did. And then you have to pay me this above and beyond my hourly rate.
So
For us, it's similar, Nikki, but not, we don't get extra. But like if it's the para covering, it's $55, or if it's me covering, it's $55. Whereas, you know, is it equitable, like you said, Nikki, with the degrees and the trainings and everything that we have to have with our certification. So we do get paid, but we don't get anything above what everybody else gets paid in Howard County.
And this might just be a very basic question, but are most school counselors, outside of the subbing problem, are they generally salary? Are they generally hourly employees? Does it depend? Like, how does that work?
I would say most school counselors, so a salary. However, I know that in certain counties during the summer, depending on your contract, so counties are different. Some school counselors are employed 12-month, some are employed 11-month, some are employed 10-month, but get paid over 12-month.
Right.
And then some are employed 10-month, but then have days or hours, for example, in Montgomery County, that you are working. And that's then is like an hourly rate. And what I was saying, that part of it. So, and what I was meaning when I was saying above your hourly, so those people who were, for example, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Marie. So if you got paid, let's say it's $55, you still get your salary, but then you get that 55, let's say you did it for 3 hours, you were sub coverage for 3 hours, you get paid 100 and whatever that is, in addition to your salary for that sub coverage for that day. Does that make sense? Does that make any sense? So it's a configuration depending on where you are and what was negotiated.
Gotcha.
I'm just
Well, and there's a difference between elementary versus middle and high, because in Anne Arundel County, I don't even know if school counselors are eligible for it. I mean, most of the time we're not the ones asked to cover, but if we are, for elementary, it's up to 50 for half a day. And if you're doing that the whole day, it's 50 in the morning, 50 in the afternoon. So the most you could get is 100. It's not by hour.
So there's some lack of consistency, it sounds, across the board, which
if we're being asked to sub, why would they be asking someone who's not a quote unquote teacher to substitute? Right? Because that's where that definition comes in. If we're, because I'm certified K through 12, but if you're saying I'm not a teacher, but yet you're pulling us into sub, that doesn't make sense.
boom, you better tie that together, Holly. But it sounds like with the subbing part, it sounds like there's just a consistency issue across the board, because it shouldn't be, you know, at some places you have to, and others, like in my county, it really just depends on the administrator, right? Like I have a great administrator who never asks me, but I have coworkers who get pulled to sub on a daily.
Who are school counselors?
Who are school counselors in other buildings, yeah.
Gotcha.
Maureen was gonna say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in. I'm in Montgomery County. Like my high school, I don't think they would ever call us, because they know I preach ASCA all the time, and they understand it. But if we were to sub, I don't think we would get paid, because my issue that I've elevated this last year is with when we have school counselors out and there's no sub, I have to do the work of that school counselor that's out on top of my work, and I don't get paid in any way extra. So I've got my caseload plus somebody else's. So we've been elevating, if a school counselor is out a day and we're covering their caseload, that's extra work we're doing. That should be considered pay as well. But we don't get paid for that. So I'm covering my caseload, right?
Right.
Then the counselor who's out, we've got to absolve that person's work for that day. And there's no additional compensation for that.
Do subs for school counselors exist? Is that a thing, like in the same way that it exists for teachers, or not really?
Only for long term. So the
Exactly.
counselor's out Monday or Tuesday because they're sick, they're just out, there's no sub.
Okay.
We could, you know, come up with internal strategies to cover that person. It's more if it's a long-term, you know, illness, baby, maternity leave, things like that, that there's there's a process to get a long-term sub. I did just want to chime in because things were mentioned about 504. I've done a lot of work in my county as part of an advocacy group, because in our county, the biggest issue that we have decided to put all of our efforts behind is the 504 and how inappropriate it is for school counselors. So we did a lot of research and created a position paper that we are getting folks to sign off and that they support the work, and meeting with county folks to really elevate this concern, because the 504s are so expansive, and in some ways it's more than an IEP. And so I'm happy to send out to you offline so you can see all the research we've done.
Yeah, Nikki sent me a copy of that on Wednesday, actually. I haven't got a chance to read the whole thing yet, in full disclosure, but it does seem very interesting. And I'm just curious, like, what has the reception been from the county folks so far?
So everybody off the record agrees 100%, like it should not be school counselors. Anyone in admin will not go on the record saying that. We are meeting with county folks. And so like the biggest issue right now is like, where's the funding? So based on my understanding, IEPs get federally funded. There's for 504s, like the school systems have to absolve that funding. And so, I've been in school counseling 25 some years ago. 504s that we would write 25 years ago, the level and the complexity now is very different. And so there's, part of the 504 could be counselor, right? The part where I'm providing my professional opinion and support, but a lot of the administrative tasks associated with it clearly are not in our purview.
And in the past, were there other staff that weren't school counselors who were more involved in the admin work than it is now? Or was it always school counselors and it's just gotten worse because the complexity's gotten worse? I'm just kind of curious, like, kind of how things were different in the past, if they were different in the past.
So it pretty much was a thing where, just to kind of add to what Maureen is saying, they did not used to, the 504 did not used to mirror the IEP the way that it has evolved now. So now it's essentially the same process without the funding for staffing. So it was pretty much always school counselors. And I think some places are trying to be more equitable, because what happened is there's no law, there's no anything that says requirements on training, certification, or any kind of job description on who should be doing it. So it just fell to us. And anytime we bring it up, the answer is usually just, but there's nobody else to take it. So in Howard County, one of the things that we did that is still met with great resistance is we actually came up with a job description in conjunction with our union, and put it down at like a para-level, secretary level pay, because it doesn't have to be, there's nothing on the book saying that you have to have a certain level of education or anything like that to do it. But because no one is doing anything about it, there's nowhere else for it to go.
Could you possibly send either Nikki or Holly a copy of the job posting you guys made, just so I have a copy of it?
Sure.
Cool.
The other thing I want to add that might help provide some insight is when this started, if I go 25 years ago when I started school counseling, ASCA had not really fully defined the model of our work. And so I think you had a lot of hodgepodge of what school counselors did based on, how school counseling started. But as our professional association has done the research and has created this model that's evidence-based, a lot of programs have not gone back to look at how do you implement a school counseling program that is in alignment with the model. So it's still based on, I don't know, whatever they use to design their school counseling program. So it's also like this theoretical shift that needs to happen, where if we've got this model, we've got to look at our programs to see, are they in alignment of the model? Otherwise, we're never going to be able to implement this model or it's
That's
gonna be quite challenging.
That's
And
really interesting.
I think, Maureen, you're right on. And I see Shanta, your hand is lifted, but when you come back, because I think the other part is professional identity, because I think you'll hear sometimes counselors will say, well, I don't do like mental health or something like that. And I'm like, when you say that, then what pushes back or that challenge that happens then is, then people say, well, then what do you do? Then it would seem appropriate. Then let me give you 504s. Let me give you, bus duty. Let me give you the coordination of the Angel Tree Project. And and those are all, helpful things. And I think because counselors are also just naturally helpful people, we stepped in to just help out where we saw vacancies. But the truth is our training is really, we are trained professionals in mental health awareness. Now, we're not doing counseling in the school necessarily, therapy in the school, but we are trained to provide short-term solution focused, evidence-based counseling resources and interventions to our students to help them be academically successful. So we are trained to do that and all, which looks like group counseling for groups, which looks like individual, short-term solution focused individual, looks like targeted classroom guidance, social emotional lessons. That's what it looks like. And it's what we're trained to do. Master scheduling, that's not, we're really not trained to do that. I mean, we do it because it helps, but that's not what we're trained to do. And so I think it is really getting that professional identity up and going so that we're all singing the same song. Because sometimes I think we're saying different things and we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot when you say something like that. I'm like, when you say that, I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Shanta, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. So I had a couple of questions just based on the conversation that was being had. Is there any talk around kind of streamlining it across the state? I think a lot of the problems come in, and I do understand every county is, a separate entity, but I think a lot of problems come in when it's not a streamline across the state. Like, we're all Maryland state counselors. We all had to have the same qualifications to become a Maryland state counselor, but depending on which district you go to, you may get more, you may get less, you may have to do more, you may have to do less. So I don't know if that has been a conversation, but maybe something for a basis or a foundation for various things to be set across the board. And then, I'm sorry, did you want to?
No, go ahead.
And then my second thing was to Nikki's point about the short-term counseling. We have a SEED program at my school, which is social emotional academic development for students with ED. There is a mental health professional assigned to that program, but there's always been this fight about counselors providing the counseling. But those students need counseling. They have it on their IEPs for the entire school year. Mm-hmm. And you're telling me I have to counsel them for the entire school year, but that's not really what my role is. So has there been any discussion about having in writing that, because I've looked for this as well, that we provide short-term counseling, like in writing, in black and white, not for the 10 months or anything like that. So those are my questions.
Yeah, so on the first part about like figuring out the roles of the different peoples in schools, this is something, like I said, my firm has represented social workers and including social workers in schools for many, many years. And we've represented some other school-based health providers over the years as well. And that's been one of kind of like the biggest complaints, I guess, for lack of a better word, over the years, is that it's just, there's not always clear guidance on like the school social worker does this, the school counselor does this, the school psychologist does, that. And it's been very hard to really fully educate policymakers about kind of those different roles. There is actually a legislator named Delegate Bagnall who, for the past couple of years, has been working on legislation to try to create, I don't know if she calls it a commission or a task force, I can't remember, to kind of try to flush out some of these roles and, provide better guidance on who is supposed to be doing what in the, in the school system. The other kind of difficult factor for you guys, this applies probably to you guys, and to the school psychologists is that there's not much information about what it is you guys are supposed to do in law. Like a doctor, a nurse, a social worker, like all of that stuff about what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do is like all written into statute. But for school psychs and for school counselors, a lot of it is more in COMAR, which, is supposed to have the same force of law, but I think, as everyone probably knows, is usually treated a little bit more squishily. And so that's another thing maybe it's worth thinking about is like, do we want to define more clearly somewhere in statute what a school counselor is? That might be worth thinking through at some point too. I know on Wednesday we talked about creating one-pagers for us to provide to legislators. So at least legislators have a better understanding of like what it actually is a school counselor and what kind of role they play in the system. So definitely something that people have been talking about for a while, and I think is probably worth including in different ways in some of our advocacy too, for sure.
Can you, I think that was an interesting like light bulb that I just had, because I just shared COMAR, but I never really thought about the idea that COMAR is not as enforceable, I guess, as what you're saying is a statute. So can you explain so what we have, like that link that I just shared, which kind of outlines really an Ask a National model, which and I thought the mayor said that they had to do, but I guess it's not. So help me understand that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. So it's kind of depends on whether you mean like the real legal question or like how things work in real life. You know what I mean? So as a legal question, COMAR is supposed to have the same force of law as, a black letter statute. It's all supposed to be the same. But in real life, I think generally COMAR is treated as kind of like a little bit less, I don't want to say important, but a little less like firm than statute. And so sometimes there's less emphasis on making sure you're following COMAR or not. The other thing is that a lot of times things in COMAR don't always have an enforcement mechanism, built into them. This is probably not an example that would ever really help school counselors, but just for the sake of an example, social work is licensed by the Department of Health, and it's all written into statute how all the licensure is supposed to work. And if you practice social work without a license, you can get a fine. There's like a structure to like actually enforce the social work statute. In COMAR, when MSDE created the COMAR that says this is what a school counselor is and this is what a school counselor does, they're really just saying, it's really just like they just like declare this as a fact, and there's not really a way to enforce it. I guess probably somewhere someone could complain to the State Department of Ed that Prince George's County, I'm just making this up, is making school counselors do something outside their scope, and then maybe MSDE would, say something to the superintendent for Prince George's County. But there's not really like a real enforcement mechanism. It's more just like MSDE said, this is it, and there's not really a mechanism to enforce things. So that's kind of the other big difference, is that it's kind of just like
a piece of paper.
Right. Just a piece of paper.
It's helpful because for example, so I'm licensed, and that when you just said that, I made it clear. I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor.
Right.
So I have the board of professional counselors that I have to answer, that has a license number and everything. And if I operate outside of or do something, then it goes before the board. I can get my license revoked. It would be problematic on a lot of different levels. And there's like a whole statute of different things, so that dinged. Whereas even though I'm certified as a school counselor, there isn't beyond, I don't know. There's no COMAR police is what I always say. to kind of just, to, I don't know, lock me up and put me in Comar jail. So I think that makes, something.
And the one thing too that, maybe this is slightly of a tangent, but, is that under the blueprint, there's supposed to be increased services for kids not in the blueprint legislation, but in the blueprint commission documents, they talk about certain ratios for school counselors. And so at some point, there may be an opportunity to tie certain ratios back to like the AIB, which is the board that oversees all of the blueprint stuff. And the AIB is going to have enforcement tools in the education space that really haven't ever existed before. So there might be ways to maybe use the AIB to try to enforce some of these rules that we feel aren't really being followed. So that might change the paradigm a little bit from how it's been in the past, where it's just kind of like, these are the rules and you follow them or you don't, essentially.
Yeah, that's helpful. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. No, I just did want to say that, that it is true that statute, like state statute, does trump Comar when it comes to accountability. And, from my understanding of it, where Comar really comes into play is, say, for example, oftentimes at the local school system level, a parent or a student may challenge a decision. And I'll just use, a dispute over grade or grading or something to that effect. And then if it goes through that review process, Comar gets referenced to say, well, was the regulation followed? And if not, that could sway the decision. Or, likewise, if a decision gets funneled up to MSCA for the state board to make a decision, oftentimes, again, Comar and the regulation get reviewed to see if it was followed to help sway into the decision making. Or, if there is some kind of civil legal action that's in question, they would go to Comar to say, well, did the school or the school system or that employee, did they follow the regulations? So I think that does factor into it, or where Comar kind of has its teeth in decision making. Though interestingly, the one thing that I did want to share, and I can drop the link or I can try and share the document, is way back at the beginning of today's session, we talked about the FAFSA outreach plans, which is being reviewed by, it's in Maryland Annotated Code 7-212, where the county boards have to develop FAFSA outreach plans. And so there is a Financial Aid Advisory Council who they published. They're the ones overseeing this and responsible for that part of the law. And they published a final report that had, and this was back in April, they published a report, in that it had recommendations and strategies. And on page 12, it talks about how the role of school counselors should be protected in order for them to be able to do more of this direct service, and in order for them to assist more students with completing the FAFSA and the MIFSA. And they actually make references to Comar where they're saying, as the example says, further laws have been passed. They're referring to regulation. It's passed that emphasize the 80-20 rule, 80% direct or indirect services, 20% on program planning and school support, but most school counselors are not given sufficient time to meet the 80% guidance. Additional supports can be provided to school counselors by reducing non-ASCA aligned duties such as 504 and SST coordination, scheduling, and lunch and bus duties that do not align with ASCA. So that was one of their specific recommendations or strategies, if that helps you in terms of having this, because the code was passed into law, and here's this committee that oversees that piece of the law that's saying, hey, based on the law, this is a recommendation and strategy that we recommend.
Yeah, Jonathan, that is actually, I was gonna say, when you, Marion Hoyt, one of our vice president for secondary, so she's on that committee and has been very outspoken about the role of school counselors. And that's why it's so important to have us at the table, to be there, because it is, so if you can serve on one of our work groups, it is really, and to see John, it just made my heart smile to see Jonathan quoting what I know Marion's voice was really active and engaged and making sure that we are there and people are kind of thinking about who we are and what we do. If you want us to do this, remove this. So thank you, Marion. And Scott, just so you should know, I don't know if you came on later, but Jonathan Turner is with MSCE. He is, we are very glad that he's here on his weekend hours, so he's not doing his, but he is definitely here. We have a very strong collaboration with MSCE, their student services, and really speaking to serving school counselors across the state. We know that they have to implement many of the things that we then or provide comment, but we can be a little bit more outspoken about what school counselors need, and then provide the support to Jonathan to be able to serve our school counselors and get in on what they need.
That's really good.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. Sorry, Scott, I didn't, I guess, do a better formal introduction myself.
Totally good.
No. I wanted to make sure that happened. That was wonderful. Thank you.
I did attach that FAA report. So if you want to take a look at it, like I said, that's on page 12. And I think it's a great example of exactly what everybody's talking about is, yes, I mean, school counselors are highly skilled and they do great work, and they have a skill set that allows them to do so many things. However, in order for them to be really effective, they still need to, be able to focus in on those, those direct and indirect services as it's outlined in the national model.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, can you get that? Can we get that? I don't know if you posted it in the chat.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Here, I'll post it to everybody. Sorry, I'm more
Google.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So I'm like, all right, now this should work. All right, give me one second.
I'm a Zoom person. I don't know Google that well. But for those of you who are joining us, what I think can be really helpful, and I'm mindful of time, so we're gonna just extend probably for another 30 minutes or so, because we want to make sure that we are providing and being mindful of everybody's time. And for anyone that joined new, you're like, what did I miss? You didn't miss much. We were just having a conversation about sub-coverage, and Charles County was talking about that as a challenge. We introduced Scott, who is our lobbyist for Policy Partners. Our earlier meeting ended early, our general body, so we just started this a little bit earlier in meeting with everyone, just so that way everyone can get their Saturday going. We also talked about Section 504s and school counselors really being used with Section 504s, maybe not appropriately, kind of as a clerical assistant, a very high paid clerical assistant and project manager for Section 504. And then really talking about maybe across the state, a job description. And that's where our last conversation where Scott we were talking about maybe consider looking at the AIB and how we could really get some sort of similar language or understanding about who we are and what we do. And so we're opening the floor to anyone that wants to share what are some concerns or challenges. And this is ahead of the legislative session that's going to be starting in January.
On the 504 stuff, I just had another question. I think it was MoCo folks had created a job description for like a 504 admin or coordinator type person. Is that something that and I'm sure it changes county by county, but I'm just trying to get kind of an idea. Like, is that something we think we need a person per school? Is it a person per county or per set of schools? Like, how many people?
So that was us. That was us in Howard County, and we had said by cluster. I don't know if every county does it that way, but we have like our areas and our clusters based on the high school.
Yep.
So we were talking like 1 to 2 people per cluster, or I think originally we had started out with like 12, something like that, because high schools have more, as you go up the levels, there's more students, more 504s. And somebody earlier had pointed out, Holly, I believe, the other thing that made things more difficult for us is that the ESSA standards expanded the criteria. So it's available to practically anyone now. Like almost anybody can get a 504 now, which is why the numbers shot up. And I see what you're saying, Maureen, but like at my school, I only have 14. So you wouldn't get a whole person for that. But if it was someone in that cluster and that was their only job, then they could handle those the same way that as an elementary school counselor, I'm one of me for 860 students. So you can handle 300, 400 504s if that's your only job.
Helpful, that's really helpful.
But yeah, it's essentially at the bare bones, it is a clerical job.
Right.
Because the experts at the table, we're providing the input, but that's not the hard part. Like going to the meeting and speaking as a school counselor is not the hard part. It's setting up the meetings with all the parents, getting all the paperwork back from teachers, dealing with all of those things that that you don't need a highly trained professional to do.
Right.
But no one else owns it because it's not federally funded.
That's interesting.
And it's interesting that it's not falling under special education where there is funding and staffing. That has always baffled me why it's separate when the process completely mirrors, like the forms even almost look the same.
Right.
It's just that the 504 is access to education, whereas the special ed IEP is modification to education. But it's the same process, but it doesn't fall under special education.
So on the IEP side, this like coordinator admin type person exists.
Oh, they have a whole special education staff. Like the more IEPs you have in a building, you get more staffing for it because it is a federally funded staffed program. Did I say that right, Nikki?
Yeah, and it's because it's two different laws. The Section 504 is a law that actually even us as adults, you have access to, I can't remember what law, 1970, whatever, remind me. And it's a section, it's the Disabilities Act. And so that's why. So it's funded under that law, not funded because it goes, it's a section, in that law. Whereas the IEP, which is special education services, is a whole nother separate law. So it's kind of two different tracks, unfortunately. And so I won't say people found a loop. I don't know.
I think the law was originally meant for, really it's for adults too. Okay. So let's say you have a war veteran that has a
504 is for adults.
Yeah, 504. So let's say you have a war veteran who enters the workplace and they have a disability due to, something that happened in a war, right? So they have an accommodation, so they have the same access that anybody else would in the same work environment. But because they're an amputee, they might need to have access, closer access to an elevator or something like that, right? Well, there was an explosion, I think, because we can, in my mind, you think ADHD is considered a medical diagnosis. So children who have a diagnosis of ADHD can qualify for a 504. So once that kind of opened up, then and we're also, if we're saying that there's a student who we think is struggling, then we're supposed to bring it forward. And if a student goes to the health room frequently or is found to have an allergy, then the health room now, their guidance changed in that they're supposed to reach out to parents and ask whether or not the parents want their child to be considered for a 504. So it's almost like this process where they're recruiting people to enter that process. And now you can have a meeting and determine that the child is eligible but does not need a plan. But you still had to have the meeting, which means you still had to send out the invitation, you still had to start the paperwork, you still had to schedule the meeting,
Get everybody there. Right.
so it's exploded. And yeah, with the Americans with Disabilities Act, it doesn't come with federal funding. So that's like a whole federal argument about 504, why 504 doesn't get federal funding, but IDEA does.
Yeah, that's essentially.
That's interesting.
And here's the other part of it too. And I used to say this all the time, and correct me. Also, if we're out of compliance at 504, so if you're out of compliance with special education, there's a process. You go to the state slaps your hand, bad guy, da da da. If we're out of compliance with section 504, you immediately go to the U.S. Department of Education, the federal government. There's no state person in the state. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but there's not a state office in that level to handle that. That goes to the U.S. Department of Education. Civil rights. Thank you. And so
you're absolutely right. And I mean, because we've been told that it sits with the Title IX office, but that's not 100% accurate. It's kind of baffling. And I just dropped again, I added another attachment. This was a document from March of 2018 that my former boss, who a lot of people here, I know Nikki knows Dr. Lynn Muller really well, a huge advocate for school counseling, but this was an attempt to help provide some guidance and guidelines around what the school counselor's role in these related services to students with disabilities should look like. And so it's a bit dated, but it does help provide some examples of what a school counselor's role should look like in supporting, students with disabilities or in the 504 process, and what they shouldn't do. And the reason that this recently came up, Nikki mentioned some of the work with the school psychologists and the school social workers. And one of my colleagues, Dr. April Turner, who oversees the school psychologists for the state, they were working on trying to develop the same sort of document, but that it includes those other related service providers to provide a more kind of comprehensive look at what would a coordinated student services team, how would they approach these services.
And maybe what we could do is put this on under our resource tab for our school council to have access to, so that way, as you're looking at having these conversations, that we can post this for people who aren't here, and we can say, remember to check the resource tab as you're trying to advocate for the appropriate roles in your county of what you should do and what you shouldn't be doing. That would be really, I think that would be a good place.
I think this goes back to where you were kind of saying though, Scott, of the enforceability, right? Because Jonathan just provided us with a document that clearly states it is inappropriate for us to be a case manager, like clearly laid out by MSDE, but that's not what translates down to the superintendents to get right down to the school level, even though it's written right there in black and white. So I guess my question to you is, how do you combat it when it's already in writing and it's just not happening?
So I have a couple thoughts. I mean, one, I would also kind of be curious what Jonathan thinks. Like, is there a process internally for MSDE to, instruct schools on how to do this better, or is that not really, a process that exists?
Well, I mean, so Maryland is a local control state, right? So it's as Nikki has kind of pointed to, it's what happens in legislative session that drives that. Now, from the MSDE perspective, so I say all that to say that we cannot force school systems to do stuff. They get to make, and you'll see it in the way that COMAR is worded. It will say, the local school system shall develop a policy on grading and reporting. However, they then, the school system gets to determine what that policy is, and we can't, our accountability is, hey, you've got to have it. And then typically what happens is something happens, or, it's kind of reactive in that, all right, well, now we've identified this, so now we have to look at changing the regulation. And so, it is, and that's exactly how back in, I believe it was 2018 or 2019, that's how we got Comar updated to include those pieces about the school counseling program and 80% direct service and so forth. So, it could be, and I can certainly talk to my boss, Walter Salee, he's director of student services, about, where things are at in terms of the work with the school psychologists and the school social workers, as I mentioned, and trying to kind of flesh out and better define what the roles. But really, the biggest advocacy part starts at the local level. They bring it to their legislators, and then they bring it into session, and that's really what helps drive it all. But I definitely can, let them know that this is something that is weighing heavily on everyone's minds, and kind of see what next steps could be.
And I would just say that, the main enforcement tool that the General Assembly has, is related to funding. That's usually kind of the first, thing the General Assembly will do, is like, if, I don't know if we would do this at a school level, but that's probably just the easiest way to say it. If we went to the General Assembly and we're saying, hey, County X, is doing X, Y, and Z thing that we don't think is appropriate, we want you to withhold funding from them till they fix it. Like that's like really the main enforcement mechanism that the General Assembly has. Obviously, when it comes to the school space, the threshold of withholding funding is typically much higher, just because I don't think we want our schools not to have money. So that's one option. The other thing is that, like I said, the AIB is going to have much more enforcement power in the school space than really anyone's ever had. They've been having meetings over the summer about their statewide plan that the AIB has to put out. It should be out in, I guess, like a couple more, like another week or so, a week and a half or something like that. I've been going to those meetings and highlighting that, the Blueprint Commission recommended ratios for school counselors, school social workers, and for school psychs. And then there's some other stuff related to number of nurses as well. And so I think it's very likely that the statewide plan will at least require counties to be providing more information about how they're making progress to these ratios. And then I think that maybe over time, we may be able to further entrench those ratio requirements into statute in different places that would give the AIB more ability to require schools to meet the ratios. Right now it's more just like strong recommendations, I guess. And then if we're able to tie it back to the AIB could make enforcement decisions if counties or schools aren't meeting whatever they're required to do.
How likely is the AIB to withhold funding? I imagine that is a huge
It's a really good question. I think no one knows yet. Is the short answer. At some of the initial meetings that the AIB had, there was a lot of discussion about how, the AIB should not be reluctant to withhold funding if they think it's necessary, because that's kind of the main enforcement mechanism that exists in the blueprint. And one of the big promises of the blueprint is it's going to have accountability in ways that past reforms of school funding didn't, and that if the AIB isn't willing to play the enforcement role, then it kind of means the blueprint might not work as well as it's supposed to work. So there's definitely been folks kind of trying to encourage the AIB to really take seriously that role, but it's obviously politically hard to take money away from schools. So I don't think anyone knows, I guess, is the short answer. I know the General Assembly really wants the AIB to play a strong enforcement role. So if it looks like the AIB isn't, then, you know, maybe there'll be interest in trying to change that structure a little bit in the General Assembly. But we won't really know until, you know, the statewide plan comes out in October, and then the counties have until I think March of next year to give their plans. And then so we're really not going to see any enforcement stuff for a little while. So I think it's hard to know for sure. But hopefully, because the AIB is independent from politics and there's a lot of pressure on them to do a good job, you know, hopefully they're willing to really take seriously that responsibility. But we probably won't really know until, you know, some school does something they're not supposed to, and it becomes before the AIB. So I don't know if that helps answer the question or not.
No, I think it's a helpful start. And I think I'm mindful of the time, but I know that there was a great question Susan had in the chat along the lines of the AIB. And then we can probably talk about the next steps of what happens next, and what is maybe our call to action as school counselors and what we're looking for. So Susan asked a great question. What is the AIB saying about the National Board of Certified Teachers, school counselors? And can the AIB require that we are included?
It's a good, yeah, it's a really good question. It's come up a couple times in the AIB meetings. So I don't think the AIB could say that school counselors have to be, or maybe I put it a different way. I've been talking a lot to some folks who MABE, the Maryland Association of Board of Eds. So they represent all the boards of eds. I've been talking to their lobbyist a lot about this, and there's a lot of confusion about if school counselors can be included, and if so, when they can be included, and what are the criteria of including them. I think it's pretty clear that there are at least some subset of school counselors that can be included. And so I think the bigger question is around when and what are the requirements. So I think what AIB could do is make more clear the class, you know, of school counselors that are eligible and what are the requirements on a school counselor to be eligible. I think the AIB probably could do that. What I don't think the AIB could do is expand who should be covered. But that being said, it is one of the obligations of the AIB, and this is maybe a little bit more down the road, it is one of the obligations of the AIB to make recommendations on changes to the blueprint legislation itself. And so I think after these plans go into effect and the AIB starts doing monitoring meetings and stuff, it might make sense for us to, you know, start slowly kind of raising concerns about the lack of school counselors, the lack of competitive wages, and making clear to the AIB that because of these issues, we're never going to be able to achieve X, Y, and Z goals. And then I think down the road, maybe there's a possibility that the AIB would maybe suggest the General Assembly look at some of these issues for potential changes to the actual underlying law in the blueprint.
Scott, there have been a couple questions in the chat, and
sorry, I don't think chat.
No, it's okay. I know. And so part of I just wanted to let you know that during the general meeting, part of what I said was that you're trying to schedule a meeting. I said it's like 2 steps backwards to take 1 step forward regarding the definition of teacher.
Right.
And how there's this statute and no one seems to understand where it came from or how it got there, but also how to define what a teacher is. And based on, so we're going to have a meeting with a lawmaker who will make a formal request of the AG, correct? To look back at the statute and say, do school counselors qualify as teachers? And there are a couple ways that they could respond to that. And based on their response, then that would determine what the next steps would be for us. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think, you know, in talking to John Willems, if folks know him, he's the lobbyist for MABE. And I got similar feedback from MSCA, the union as well. And this gets to Kim's question, is that, you know, if you look at the blueprint law, there is, I can't remember the number, but there's like 5 or 6 like types of jobs that are explicitly excluded from the definition of teacher. It's like the social worker, the school psych, the reading specialist. There's a couple more that I'm forgetting, but there's a handful of folks that it says in black letter law they're excluded from the definition of teachers for the purposes of these raises and stuff. You guys are not included in that list of people who are explicitly excluded. Now, then there's a secondary question in that, like, in the blueprint legislation, it talks about the teachers who are eligible, and it talks about folks. One of the sentences that's in there is something to the effect of has to be spending most of their time providing services in a classroom or something like that. I'm probably butchering the exact language, but that's the general gist, is they're spending most of their time in a classroom. And so then the question becomes, if school counselors aren't explicitly excluded, how do we calculate that time? Yeah, and how I put in 60% for a teacher. And so there is some guidance from MSDE that is out that says that if a school counselor is doing 60% of their time teaching, they are theoretically eligible for these raises. But MSDE in their guidance didn't really give a lot of detail on what is teaching in the context of a school counselor. And so the counties have been trying to figure out, you know, how are they supposed to operationalize that guidance from MSDE? You know, the one big question from MABE's perspective is they don't want to, and I think this is, you know, somewhat fair, I guess, but they don't want to be wrong in who they don't want to put too many people into the career ladder and these other systems who they're not going to get money back from MSDE, because in the end of this whole analysis, MSDE is going to partially fund, you know, some of the system. And so I think the perspective from the counties is that if they put somebody in who they think is supposed to be covered, and then down the road, MSDE is like, oh no, that you know, Holly wasn't supposed to be covered by this, then they've already promised Holly the money, but MSDE is not going to give them their share, and then now the local board is going to have to figure out a way to give Holly the whole bucket of money that she was promised. And so that's their big concern, is they don't want to make their universe too big and then MSDE be like, hey, you weren't supposed to include these people. And in talking to MABE, and this isn't, you know, a slight against MSDE, or at least the folks from MSDE that we work with, MABE has said that, you know, MSDE hasn't been able to give super clear guidance on how they are supposed to consider school counselors. You know, it would have been easier if it said no school counselors, because then it would have been obvious. That's how it is for the social worker, at least. So that's kind of where it currently stands.
So for the people who are on here, who I know are the NBCTs, who, you know, we're working in the same building with colleagues who are NBCTs, who are getting pay in their paycheck every 2 weeks that we're not, even though we went through the same work that they did and got the same credential they did, but because of someone's definition of teacher, we're not getting, and we're the only people that, there's us and reading specialists are the only people that can get an NBCT who are not being included in the salary enhancement. So that's been the frustration. So for those of them that are on here, part of it is once we get clarity on the definition of teacher, then we know what we need to do next. Because right now, MSDE will say, well, we already defined it. And apparently there's at least one school counselor out in West County who is a part-time school counselor and part-time classroom teacher. So they qualify because they literally are the one grading students at least 60% of their time. That's not what we do, and it's really not appropriate for us to do because it's two different roles. But if we get clarity that says, no, school counselors are not defined in that, then we can work on, okay, then what do we need to write up? Because school counselors who are NBCTs are kind of the unicorns, right? We're not classroom teachers, but we're not social workers and school psychologists, but we went through the same amount of work. So my mind, it could be like we are our own little sliver of other, because I don't know, maybe Scott, you have more information on the work that's being done for the career ladder legislatively for everybody else that's not already on the career ladder.
Yeah, and I also have a question about probably back to Jonathan about the thing you put in the chat, but on the career ladder, stuff, I think there was a bill last year that in working with the social workers and the school psychs we had put together, working with Delegate Ebersol, and just for full disclosure, it did not include school counselors because when we were talking to the attorneys involved with writing that bill, they all told us, oh no, school counselors are already covered. And so, that was why you guys weren't included. It wasn't a personal slight. It was just that we were told you were included. That bill, didn't pass. It's obviously a very expensive bill. And so it's more of just kind of a starting of a conversation. The big issue is, the state can probably afford, expanding the career ladder. The bigger question is when we talk about the locals, because there's local share involved in the career ladder. And so in talking to MABE, one of their thoughts was trying to figure out ways to either increase the funding or more directly tie the expanded career ladder to funding that already exists. The one thought that I know I've been talking to social workers about, and this is maybe something for us to think about too, is in theory, the state is about to get a significant windfall of money due to the legalization of marijuana. And so marijuana legalization will be on our ballots in November. So if folks have an opinion on that, they should make sure they vote. But the way they did, I don't know why they did it this way, but the way they did the marijuana legalization, they essentially deferred either to next year or the year after all the questions about what the money is going to be used for. So really this year on the ballot, all we're voting on is literally the legalization, not the taxes aren't set up yet, where the money goes isn't set up yet. But this, I think might be worthwhile thinking about, is that a place where maybe we can earmark some of the money for expanded career ladder for behavioral health in particular. And I know MSCA, has been trying to come up with ways to explain the blueprint. They want to do a blueprint that probably expands further than I think is maybe the easier priorities in the General Assembly. I think the easier priority in the General Assembly is behavioral health folks, because it's just a very important issue. It's something that's being talked about a lot. MSCA also wants to include a lot more of the paraprofessional folks, bus drivers, and those types of people, ensuring they are getting salary raises, which they probably deserve. But I think it's probably a little harder political nut to crack. So the short answer to the question is that yes, those conversations are definitely still happening. And I think probably the legalization of marijuana, I know people have mixed opinions about that, might be a tool that we could maybe use as a place to tap into some of this money. Sorry, the dog.
It's okay. I think one of the things, and I know as we were wrapping up for this, but I think the next step, so what you're seeing is our initial conversations are really trying to build a collaboration, and certainly to chime in, Holly, and where we're meeting, especially around, well, let's just first talk about the three big topics that we are seeing that are coming to the table consistently, which is caseload, and I would probably put in there that sub-coverage conversation, caseload, sub-coverage, Section 504s, which are also the inappropriate uses of counselors with Section 504. Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing that outline, which is really helpful of appropriate, inappropriate roles for us, because that way we can have, when we're meeting with delegates and serving on work groups, having a starting point of kind of reference to say. And then the other part of it, two other pieces that we had, which was a conversation around FAFSA completion, the inappropriate role of school counselors in this whole FAFSA completion. That was from Wednesday night conversation. A number of high school counselors were sharing their responsibilities and that, and how, what is an appropriate way to use it, inappropriate. And then certainly the big conversation that we're having, which is the National Board Certified Teacher, school counselors being left out of the career ladder, and having conversations with, and that's why we're looking to serve on work groups. We are looking to, and you'll find this year that we're going to do a number of different things, serving on work groups, meeting with delegates to educate and inform them about who we are and what we do, and seeing if we can get some support. We had a meeting, Holly, were you at that meeting? We had a meeting, Scott, were you at that? I don't know. We had a meeting with Delegate Chair Atterbury, Chair Atterbury. She is chair of the Ways Means Committee, who is the big pocket for education, like education falls underneath. And so she definitely heard what we had to say and was really concerned about school counselors being left out of the blueprint. And so where before we thought they didn't have an appetite, there seemed to be an appetite. There's no promise. Essentially, she was saying, because we're in an election year, we're going to see what happens with who takes over the governor's house, the governor's mansion, to determine like what the legislative agenda will be. So on that note, the other reason why we're hosting, two things that we're hosting is a conversation with the the gubernatorial candidates, one with the Democratic person, Westmore, is confirmed for Friday, October the 14th at 2:30. And we sent an invitation to Dan Cox, a Republican gubernatorial candidate. So if anybody has a connection, we want to meet with him. So we've opened ourselves up and made ourselves available, and waiting to hear back from him. So if you have a personal connection, please send it to us so we can get connected. But to have this conversation about, school counselors and the role that we do with the candidates. So that's kind of an overview of what we're looking at. I don't know, Scott and Hollywood, if you want to share any other things in terms of the issues that we're hearing, and then what are the interventions or strategies we're trying to do to address those issues.
One other one, and I also have a question to maybe for Jonathan or for the group. One is that people may have heard of the Consortium for Community Supports that was created by the Blueprint. And there's a lot of money in the Blueprint for, different school health stuff. But the Commission or the Consortium for Community Supports is really where most of the money that is going to go to behavioral health is housed. The consortium is just now starting to starting their meetings. They've only had 2 meetings so far, but that consortium is going to be where a lot of that money for behavioral health comes from. The one maybe small bill that I think we were kind of kicking around for next year was to add a school counselor seat to the consortium, because right now there's a school social worker, there's a school psychologist, there's a nurse, there's a lot of folks in the health space on this, except a school counselor. And so I think the thought in talking to Nikki and Holly is that's probably a small ask. It doesn't cost anything to add an extra seat to the consortium. It'll ensure at least we're in that conversation. I think the other maybe big value there is it gives us a reason to show up at the General Assembly to specifically talk about school counseling. We'll really be the only people who care about this bill. So we'll be the only ones really at the hearing, and it'll give us time to more specifically talk about some of these other issues that we're worried about in a context where almost certainly the bill will get passed. Like it's like I said, it's not going to cost anybody any money, and I can't foresee it being controversial, weird things happen during session and weird stuff does get controversial. But I can't imagine this being in that bucket. But at a minimum, it at least gives us a reason to get into the General Assembly to talk about stuff. And the other thing I want to flag is that Jonathan had shared, and I just reshared this memo from MSDE about the NBCT stuff. And it provides some clarity on who is eligible for these things. And number 9 on this guidance is about school counselors. The one, and I know this is obviously, Jonathan didn't write this, but the one point of feedback that I've gotten from folks about a little bit of confusion in this guidance is in number 9, it says that school counselors are, potentially eligible as long as they are the teacher of record for at least 60% of their working time. But the question that I have gotten is that, well, one, it's a little bit unclear where teacher of record comes from, but the more explicit question is that in guidance 8, it does say that there is no, it does say that you don't have to be a teacher of record to be eligible, because it allows for co-teachers to be eligible, and co-teachers are not teachers of record. And so there's just some question about, like, is there a way to make this a little bit more clear, and also to maybe take the teacher of record requirement off school counselors and just flush out what the 60% teach time would look like. So that's just one kind of question, and maybe
I think, Scott, I think this is where we get sticky, right? Because I think Holly would agree. The problem for us is we're the redheaded stepchildren, right? We're not included with teachers, but then we're also always excluded when it comes to behavioral health. So that's really, I think, the biggest issue is we're not getting included in any of the boxes. So when there's money put towards behavioral health and mental health, that's social workers and psychs. When there's money put towards the teachers, we're excluded from that. So I think as long as we're in a box, we will get some sort of support, but we're constantly shift. It's like when conversation A is happening, then we're part of part B, but when conversations B is happening, we're kicked back to being a part of A.
No,
I know that's probably confusing, but I
totally get your point. I think it's good feedback.
Yeah, I think it's definitely helpful. And I think that's also going back to the conversation we're having earlier about identity and, our role and who we are, and owning that, and kind of having this conversation so that way legislators and the like can understand who we are. And I think some of it does get a little slippery because many of us are a part of, and I would say most of the counties are part of the teacher's contract. I want to say in most 24 counties. I've yet to come across anyone that is not part of the union, which has its benefits, but also can sometimes be a challenge, because then we get cut out of some other things that, like you were saying, behavioral health. So I think it's really being clear about who we are. So I think the next steps, if you look out, is that, and I certainly don't want to, but take over for Holly, but I know that Holly will be sharing out and providing monthly information opportunities to meet and come and talk about what we're doing, what she's doing specifically working with Scott. I know she meets once a month with Scott right now, and then once we get into the legislative session, we'll be meeting more frequently. I know it's like so much like a thing that more frequently with him, but we want to hear from you, because this is a service that, as your membership dues, this is a service that your membership dues are paying for, is the lobbyist. And so we want to make sure that when we are advocating for you as school counselors, we are really being making sure that we are addressing the needs that you are identifying. And I always say, and I want to say this because it's being recorded and clear, we are a public nonpartisan. So that means that we do not support any politician, but we do support policies that support school counselors. So we will not be supporting, you will not ever hear us publicly endorsing any political candidate. but we will support policies that speak to and support school counselors. So we support pieces of paper, policies, we don't support people. So that's the best way. And then we are going to be needing your help because we want to be able to serve on work groups, testimony. So Scott may be reaching out for you to serve on, to provide either work groups or testimony. Scott or Holly will be reaching out. I don't know if there's anything else that anybody else wants to say.
I was just going to say, Nikki, that, and Scott, I did provide the link. There was a link that you sent to me in an email about a workforce. I get all the words mixed up, commission, whatever, task force, one of those where about underrepresented groups in mental health or behavioral health. So I can send that out again, but the Department of Health is looking for 3 people to sit on a commission that would talk about ways to increase representation in behavioral health of minority populations or underrepresented groups. And we have very well qualified counselors and in MSCA who would be awesome to be part of that. So I did share that link with people in the general meeting.
That's good.
Right. Well, if there are not any other further questions, I want to thank everybody for coming to this listening session. This won't be the first. One of the things, it's wonderful to have a lobbyist, and Scott has made himself wonderful available to us. So we will continue with this effort and reach out to Holly, to myself, to Scott. You have his information as well. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. And thank you those who hung in there from our general body at 9 a.m. God bless you. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.